This will be the September 13th of the meeting of the Mayor and Council of City of Roswell. I'd like to welcome everyone here. I'd like to call the Daughters of the American Revolution to come forward and lead us in the pledge. If we'd all stand and face the flag.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we reintroduce the Daughters of the American Revolution, we have several elected officials here tonight who are running for office. And as you all know, we have an election coming up in November, and all these folks are asking for your vote. And I would first like to begin by introducing Shalitha Robertson, who's running for Superior Court Judge. If she could come to the microphone and introduce herself to everyone, and you can face all your voters out there.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Mayor said, I am Shalitha Robertson. I'm running to become your next Fulton County Superior Court Judge. I've had the pleasure of serving Fulton County for over 30 years in the capacity of a police officer, a public defender, and a city attorney. And so I'm the only candidate in this race who's seen the law from every angle. I've defended it, I've drafted it, and I've also enforced it. So I ask you please for your vote and your support November the 2nd. Please visit my website, www.electsrobertson.com. Thank you, Mayor. Was that brief enough?
Yes, Shalitha, thank you. Next, I'd like to recognize former council member Lori Henry, who's running for the county commission seat. And Lori's no stranger to this chamber.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. My name is Lori Henry. I'm running for Fulton County Commission District 2. That's the at-large seat. I'm running against Rob Pitts. I'm here to tell you that Fulton County is overspending, they're overtaxing, and they're overassessing our homes and businesses and have no plans for the future. I'd like to turn that around because status quo is unacceptable. I think we can do it, and I think it's this year. Please go to electlorihenry.com and please vote for me in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next, I'd like to invite Steve Broadbent forward, who's not running for the same seat as Lori Henry. He's running for the Fulton County Commission chair. He's our neighbor from Johns Creek.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Steve Broadbent, and I'm running for chairman of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners against John Eves, who will be ending his first term on the commission. I'm ready to provide new leadership to the commission, create a smaller Fulton County government that spends less, and most importantly, taxes you less, yet still delivers the services efficiently and eliminate that waste and bloat. My website is votebroadbent.com. I bring a portfolio of leadership experience to this position that includes 22 years with the Navy, retired as a commander. I spent some time as a Deputy Assistant U.S. Treasury Secretary, worked for a large Fortune 50 running a complex organization. Today I'm a small businessman, so I know I can handle Fulton County's problems. Hopefully I'll get your vote on November 2nd. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Steve. I want to recognize Kelly Lee. She's already been to visit us once, so we only give our candidates one chance to say. But Kelly Lee is also running for Superior Court Judge, and she's also would appreciate your vote. And I want to introduce Jaden Rutledge. Jaden, would you come forward to the microphone? Jaden was interviewing me, and Jaden, will you introduce yourself and tell the citizens what you learned about what it takes to be running as mayor? She interviewed me and found all the secrets of being a mayor. Jaden, if you'll face the audience.
What's your secret?
I'm doing a project.
You're doing a project. And what did you learn about the mayor's office?
About being a mayor.
Yes, what did you learn? You had several questions.
As the mayor of Roswell, what are some of your job duties?
No, that's the answer. You were supposed to get what that's the question. What were some of the answers I gave? They weren't important, obviously. Thank you, Jaden, for coming tonight. Let's have Nancy Jaden. And I'd like to return to the Daughters of American Revolution, and they're here because this is Constitution Week. And I'd like to invite them to come back to the microphone as I read this resolution. If you'd come forward. Whereas September 17, 2010 marks the 223rd anniversary of the signing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary and the patriotic celebration which will commemorate this occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th and 24th as Constitution Week, now therefore I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th to July 24th as Constitution Week, and ask all of our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the Constitution by diligently protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. And with that, we'd like to hear from the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Thank you. I'm Mary Beth Kidd and Paula Nelson. It's critical that our young people, more than ever, learn and understand the foundation of our country and how it works. This is an exhibit of our country's workings, and I thank you for this.
Thank you. Let's have a hand for the Daughters of the American Revolution and our U.S. Constitution. This is not in order of importance, but this is our proclamation regarding Family Day, which is just as important as our Constitution. And whereas the use of illegal drugs and the abuse of alcohol and nicotine constitute the greatest threat to the well-being of Americans' children. Do we have some folks here on this tonight? Come forward, please. Joanne Rooks. Come forward, Joanne, as I read this proclamation. Let me begin again. Whereas the use of illegal drugs and the abuse of alcohol and nicotine constitute the greatest threat to the well-being of America's children. And whereas surveys conducted by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University have consistently found that the more often children and teenagers eat dinner together with their families, the less likely they are to smoke, drink, and use illegal drugs. And whereas teenagers who virtually never eat dinner with their families are 72% more likely than the average teenager to use illegal drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes. And whereas teenagers who almost always eat dinner with their families are 31% less likely than the average teenager to use illegal drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes. And whereas the correlation between family dinners and reduced risk for teen substance abuse are well documented. And whereas parental influence is known to be one of the most crucial factors in determining the likelihood of substance abuse by teenage dinners, and whereas family dinners have long constituted a substantial pillar of family life in America, or at least as long as I've been a kid. Now, therefore, I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim Monday, September 27th as Family Day, a day to eat dinner with your children, and urge all the citizens of Roswell to join together and observe this very important occasion and have dinner with your family. And with that, Joanne, would you like to add something to that?
Sure. I appreciate your lending your support to this, Mayor Wood. And this is more than just a day to eat dinner with your children. As he cited, there's all kinds of facts that correlate frequent family dinners with lowered risk of risky behavior. I've got some materials if the council would like to
Please,
have them.
if you would give that to Kay Love, I'm sure she would. We appreciate your distributing that.
And maybe there's room somewhere in the courthouse or City Hall for the
We have
poster.
room for all good things.
I appreciate that. And I hope this will be a well-attended event in Roswell. It's supported by things like Coca-Cola and the Atlanta Braves, so we're in good company.
And dinner will be served. Thank you. Enjoy your dinner with your family. Do we have let's have a hand for that. Do I have a representative from Rivers Alive here tonight? Yes, sir. Welcome here. And I have a proclamation for Rivers Alive. Whereas the citizens of Roswell recognize that all life is dependent upon clean water and strive to restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of Georgia's waters. And whereas watersheds, the key component of the hydrologic water cycle, are an integral part of all of the Earth's systems. And whereas Georgia has 70,150 miles of streams and rivers that nourish our native plants and wildlife, and whereas Roswell has 1,675 miles of streams and is fortunate to have the Chattahoochee River running through it. And whereas we must bring together citizens, community representatives, and local government leaders to restore and preserve our watersheds. And whereas the mission of Rivers Alive is to create awareness of and involvement in the preservation of Georgia's water resources through this annual volunteer cleanup of the 14 river basins in Georgia. And whereas Keep Roswell Beautiful, in partnership with the City of Roswell, the City of Alpharetta, the Chattahoochee Nature Center, is presenting the second largest cleanup in the state on Saturday, September 25th, from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. And that will be down at Riverside Park, correct?
That's right.
At Riverside Park, and it's a good place for politicians to come and politic and be seen as picking up trash, and for families to come and have a picnic after it's over with and enjoy a meal together. And whereas there will be an extensive education area with activities and displays for all to enjoy, and whereas Keep Roswell Beautiful is also continuing their great annual duck race to be held immediately after the cleanup event at 12:45 on Oxbow Road in Big Creek, Georgia. We don't have the duck here tonight?
Here's the duck. No, we don't have the big duck here.
The big duck didn't come tonight.
You got me instead. That's right.
All right. Well, we have the big duck usually comes to the event.
He'll be there on the event.
Now therefore, I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim Saturday, September 25th, 2010, as Rivers Alive Day in Roswell. Encourage all of you and all of our politicians and all of our citizens to take part in this great cleanup event. And with that, we'll recognize our Rivers Alive representative.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. I'm Scott Hitch, a Horseshoe Bend resident, and was a Rivers Alive board member for 3 years, and now I'm on the Keep Roswell Beautiful board. The event is Saturday the 25th. It's 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., so you can hang out later, but we'll be over at 11. We're renting ducks. Each duck has a number at the bottom, and you can rent ducks and enter your chance to win. They get floated down to Chattahoochee after the cleanup. We collect all these ducks. It's a fun time for everybody, good time for families. You never had so much fun picking up trash, and it's amazing what we pull out of there, the amount of pounds. It's the second largest cleanup in Georgia, and I encourage you all to come out. Thanks.
Now,
See me if you want to.
are you selling ducks tonight?
See me if you want to rent a duck. We'll also sell them to you, but you can't win. You can take it home.
It's too late to enter into the company?
No, absolutely.
Oh, you can't. You're not
Either one.
buying
You
the
can
duck.
rent-
You're just renting a duck.
You can rent them or buy them.
Well, if you want to be in the race, you rent the duck, and it begins with a great duck drop off of the bridge over Big Creek, and it ends with cleaning up the ducks from the stream so they don't make it down to the Chattahoochee. And
We've
you're
had a
welcome
100% recovery rate thus far. So
I'm not sure after the last time. The water was really high after the last race, and I think a few ducks may have made it to Chattahoochee. I know a couple of them ended up in my kayak. And didn't make it back into the barrel. So I enjoy you, and I encourage you to rent a duck, to come to the Rivers Alive cleanup. It's a great day, and I'm promising beautiful weather and plenty of trash.
Fantastic.
So please join us. Thank you for coming tonight.
thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilmember Wynn. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Eigelhart. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding the consent agenda? All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, raise their hands. That passes unanimously. This time we'll discuss a resolution which has been put forward unanimously by all of the mayors of Fulton County, I think with the possible exception of the mayor of Atlanta. All the other mayors are supporting a resolution in support of the 1 penny transportation tax, but opposed to a tax which we would be inequitable, and that is Roswell and Fulton County and DeKalb County are already paying 1 penny for transportation. It's MARTA. And the other counties are saying, well, let's put another penny on the agenda to go for transportation for regional transportation. We're saying we're fine with 1 penny, but everybody should participate in MARTA. And unless we bring MARTA into that 1 penny provision, we're not going to support 2 pennies. And I know we're going to have some folks from council to question that, and some the Regional Business Coalition here. But Mr. Davidson, would you got a copy of that resolution we put on the overhead? And I think some of the council members, Ms. Price may have a wish to make a motion to amend it. Could you give a copy? And Mr. Davidson, if you could read what the not the whereas parts, but the resolution part, as proposed by the mayors of North Fulton County.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution of the City of Roswell regarding 1 penny sales tax to fund regional transportation system. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of Roswell support a 1-cent sales tax to fund regional transportation improvements provided neighboring metropolitan Atlanta counties join Fulton and DeKalb counties in forming a regional transit system, or, in the alternative, the legislature requires them to join Fulton and DeKalb counties to form and fund a regional transit system.
We'll first get, I think, Councilmember Betty Price wishes to propose an amendment, and see if you've got any questions from council. I know last time when we brought this a similar resolution forward, they had not had time to review it, and they may have some questions. Any questions, or Ms. Price, do you want to propose any amendment to it? I know you had suggested an amendment to the council.
Yes, the resolved portion of the proposal in our packet seems to indicate that we would be supporting a sales tax, and the reality is that this is going to a referendum, so it'll be up to the voters to decide. So I wouldn't want that to be ambiguous that we were pushing people in that direction, but I think the essential element is a regional solution to the problem. So I did have a suggestion for an alternative resolved portion of the resolution, and I'll read it if you'd like.
Please do.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Roswell, Georgia, are prepared to support a regional public transportation funding mechanism that takes into fair consideration the over 30 years of sales tax investment from Fulton and DeKalb counties that have been made to build and maintain MARTA, and call upon a Transit Governance Study Commission and Regional Transit Committee of the ARC to move expeditiously toward the creation of a regional transportation authority which would provide governance for the transit systems across the region prior to presenting a referendum for transportation sales tax to the citizens. And furthermore, there is another portion that we will work cooperatively with the regional roundtable to help develop a robust project list that impacts citizens' commutes as they travel across the region. And furthermore, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Roswell, Georgia, direct the city manager to forward this resolution to members of the Transit Governance Study Committee, the Georgia Department of Transportation, and the Atlanta Regional Commission.
Just a couple of questions about the resolution. So you're suggesting that the city not take a position on whether the citizens should vote for or against the referendum? Or are you?
Well, that's part of the first resolved, which states the items necessary prior to the referendum that is going to happen by law.
Well, I guess the question was, in the resolution as proposed by the mayors of Fulton County, we're taking a position. Are you saying we city should not take a position? Or are you saying we should?
What, are you suggesting there should be an additional resolved?
Well, I'm not asking for, I'm just trying to say, are you, the referendum as proposed by the North Fulton mayors is taking a position that we support the 1 penny sales tax. Are you saying the city should either abstain from taking a position or take a position, or are we trying to take some other course of action? It wasn't clear what your resolution said to me.
simply that we need a regional solution, that we don't have the answer from us as far as it's going to be in the hands of the voters.
Mr. Davidson is telling me, it's a little confusing to me. He says that the city cannot take a position on this referendum. On the other hand, he says that I can, as a mayor, take a position. Is that a fair statement? As a citizen who happens to be the mayor of Roswell, I can take a position. But the city, so Mr. Davidson, are you saying this is, in your opinion, as far as the city taking a position, this resolution is out of order?
The city cannot try to influence an election one way or the other. We can support what the legislature is trying to do, but you can't try to influence the referendum one way or the other.
So would either of these resolutions be appropriate in your opinion?
I think Councilmember Price's resolution supporting a public transportation funding mechanism would work, and you could incorporate that into your resolution if you wanted to.
So it's a little confusing to me. Are you saying the mayor and city council of Roswell would be prohibited by state law from supporting a 1-cent sales tax to fund regional transportation?
The mayor and council cannot try to influence a vote for the referendum when they have the referendum.
Well, that wasn't the question.
And
the question was, could we pass a resolution in support of a 1-penny sales tax?
As long as it's not trying to influence the referendum. So, I mean, if you're saying you support...
Oh, I certainly am trying to influence the referendum.
Then you cannot do that.
I cannot, as a city,
cannot do that.
So I'm going to withdraw my resolution. Councilmember Wynn. I'm not withdrawing my position. I'm very much in support of a 1-penny regional transportation sales tax, provided that we don't have to pay 2 pennies, and provided everybody participates in the regional system. And I'm going to continue to maintain that position with us, the mayors, but I'm withdrawing my resolution. Councilmember Wynn.
I'm going to, Councilmember Eichelhardt, he had his hand up first. Then I'll go after him.
Eichelhardt.
I was just going to suggest, in light of the fact that this is not necessarily pressing, we said we'd bring it back this week because we didn't want to let it go forever. But we do have a number of folks here on another issue, and we're not going to resolve this probably in front of us here quickly. So I'd like for us to have another chance to maybe discuss this in a committee and bring it back once more. Would be my suggestion to defer.
Are you suggesting we defer it until tomorrow's meeting or a later committee meeting?
Tomorrow's committee meeting would be fine.
That would be appropriate. The mayors of North Fulton County are holding a press conference Wednesday at 10 o'clock, and we'll be taking a position consistent with the resolution which I had proposed in the city of Roswell. So we as cities may not be taking a position, but I will tell you the mayors of Fulton County are unanimously taking a position in favor of the sales tax and opposed to the 1 penny. I know I've got some other folks who might wanted to speak on this, Mr. Eichelhardt, and because they're here tonight, I want to hear from them before we adjourn. Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually was going to say about the same thing that Councilman Eichelhardt did. I got this about 3 o'clock this afternoon, and I would like to have some time to digest it, and I think bringing it to committee tomorrow is I think a good idea so everybody can understand exactly what's going on, and it will give our city attorney time enough to be able to figure out all the legalities. So I would support a deferral to committee for tomorrow.
For the record, the resolution was brought to this council, 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago? Not Mrs. Price resolution. The resolution of the North Fulton, the Fulton County mayors was brought to them. It was some editing changes, so that was brought to the mayor and brought to the council and to the city attorney. But I appreciate the council's wish to have a little more time to study this issue. It's a very important issue affecting all of us in Fulton County. And with that, is anyone in the audience who wishes to have any things to say tonight? I know we've got some folks who came to be heard on this. Don't see any hands up. We'll move on to the next agenda item. And with that, we'll call upon Community Development Councilmember Betty Price. Councilmember Betty Price with Community Development to call that agenda.
The first item this evening is RZ 10-05, CV 10-01, and CU 10-03, 2925 Holcomb Bridge Road, land lots 825 and 832, Ramco Gershenson, Inc., and Mr. Townsend will give us the details.
Thank you, Dr. Price. This is petition number RZ 105, CV 10-01, and CU 10-03. The subject property is located at 2925 Holcomb Bridge Road. It's approximately 9.71 acres. The existing zoning on the property is OP. The proposal by the applicant is to request rezoning of the property of 3.53 acres from a OP designation to the C3 designation, with a conditional uses to allow for the daycare. The remaining 6.18 acres to remain in a conservation area in perpetuity. The subject property on the south side of Holcomb Bridge Road is between Steeplechase Drive and Nesbitt Ferry Road. Some of the background on this subject property: it was part of the annexation in 1999 on the east side of Roswell. It contained a Holcomb Bridge Baptist Church and was zoned AG1 agriculture at that time. In 2003, the mayor and council created a new zoning classification of Fulton County Annexed, and that was put on the subject property when it was annexed. In 2003, an application by the Baptist Church and Peter Benedictus was to rezone the property from FCA to C3 for a convenience store with gas stations, a restaurant, and 3 two-story office buildings. In 2004, May 3rd, Mayor and Council approved an amended plan rezoning the subject property from FCA to Office Professional District with 8 conditions. In 2004, a lawsuit was filed. There was a settlement agreement that was agreed upon on April 13th, 2005 that included 8 office buildings for a total of 48,000 square feet, a bank building, a total of 6,000 square feet, in a conservation area of 3.1 acres. As such, the settlement agreement is the approved plan on the subject property and is effect as of today. The applicant is requesting to amend this rezoning area. This is the area surrounding the subject property. We have the Holcomb Bridge Center across the street. We have the Horseshoe Bend subdivision to the south and east, Pike's Nursery to the south, and a storage facility to the east. This is an aerial photograph showing the subject property. The parking lot for the church is adjacent to Holcomb Bridge Road. Then you have the graded area just adjacent to that, and as you go farther to the south and west, you see the remaining portion of the area. This is the subject property showing its current zoning of OP with its surrounding C2 designations for the commercial properties, as well as the Horseshoe Bend, which is in a residential PUD designation. This is the proposed site plan showing the car wash and dry cleaner adjacent to Holcomb Bridge Road. The area in purple is the proposed daycare center, which is adjacent to a detention pond. This also shows the approximate 6.1 acres of conservation area with the stream and stream buffer indications on the rear of the property. Staff recommended denial of the application as it was inconsistent with the existing comprehensive plan designation of office for the subject property, as well as inconsistent with the settlement agreement approved by prior mayor and council. This application was reviewed by the Planning Commission. They also recommended denial of the application for those similar reasons. That is the conclusion of staff's report. If you have any further questions, Yes, I do, Mayor. That's going to confuse him. This is the settlement approved plan. Holcomb Bridge is located in this location. The proposed bank, 6,000 square feet, and then 8 office buildings, parking surrounding them, crossing the stream in this location, the 3.1 acres of conservation in this area.
Mayor Wood, could you please turn your microphone on?
Could you draw us a line showing that portion of the property which would not, of this property which would not be developed under the current plan? Just, I know it's going to be an approximate location, just so folks can see the difference between the two.
You want me to draw the area of the conservation?
The new conservation area under the plan as proposed, not as approved, but as proposed.
This plan is showing the green area would be the new conservation location. This area in red is the 3.1 and superimposes the approved office buildings on top of what they are proposing tonight.
Thank you. Does council have other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Townsend, there's been some documentation about the heights of these originally proposed office buildings as to whether they could be multi-story or single-story. Can you go over which ones are single-story and which ones are multiple-story?
When you add up the square footage of all of the buildings, they total the 48,000 square feet. The only ones that are identified on this plan are these 3 as single-story, but adding the square footages, they all are a single-story building.
So those 3 would have to be single-story. The other 4 may not be, but they couldn't. You'd have to reduce the number and add the square footage.
Correct. You'd have to either eliminate a building to put that on top of another building, if the case may be.
Okay, thank you. My second question, the conservation easement, there's been some discussion, concern about how that conservation easement would continue into perpetuity. Mr. Davidson, could you explain how all that works?
By state law, the conservation easement is in perpetuity as long as it states so in the easement itself.
So who would own the easement?
It depends on who they give the easement to, but if they gave it to the city would have the easement, but the ownership of the property itself would still be in the developer.
So who would maintain the easement?
The owner.
So there'd be no obligations, no liabilities on the part of the city for taking the conservation easement?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Wynn, was that a hand up? No. Any other questions? This time we'll hear from the applicant. That Councilmember Price.
Are we going to hear anything more from staff, or, for instance, the transportation, I think, issue is of concern?
If you wish to hear, I know transportation's here this evening, and they can answer any questions that you might have.
I think that would be useful.
Okay. Good evening. This is Mohammed Rauf, the city traffic engineer. You have any specific questions?
Well, I just noticed that in the minutes of the Planning Commission, there was some lack of clarity, and when we read them, we're not looking at something, we're just looking at the minutes. So I'm just wondering if somebody could present the actual, map and master plan of proposal to show us what the Roswell recommendations are and what the GDOT is requiring and allowing, et cetera.
Okay, GDOT has basically approved the permit for a traffic signal here, and basically there are two issues with that. One is the inadequate spacing with the adjacent traffic signals, one towards the east, that's Nesbitt Ferry, and the other one towards the west, which is the east Steeplechase Drive. That's one, and then the way the traffic signal warrant analysis was done in the traffic study was based on basically the approved site plan, but it had the lane striping as shown here. They showed it as an exclusive left turn lane and a shared through right turn lane. That's not how we would normally stripe the lanes. We would prefer to do it as a right-only lane, as shown in the different plan. This is the preferred lane assignment that we would like to see. An exclusive right turn lane and a shared through and a left turn lane. This basically just reduces the impact on the main street, because this plan lets the right turn traffic goes even on a red traffic signal. They can basically yield to the through traffic on Holcomb Bridge Road and then make the turn.
But that's been determined. That's nothing we have any.
We requested GDOT to make the change in the lane assignments, and they did not agree with it. And we requested the traffic study be redone based on these new lane assignments, and that was not submitted either.
Thank you. Can you describe the traffic impact study analysis? How it compares to the current zoning to the proposed zoning?
Basically, I think since I don't agree with the contents of the traffic study, I'm just going to put down my professional opinion. I think because of the inadequate spacing, it's not advisable to put a traffic signal in between the two already existing signals. But my understanding in talking to the city attorney is that based on the settlement agreement from a few years ago, we are not supposed to oppose the traffic signal, and I guess I could be clarified if my understanding is not correct. But I'm just giving my professional opinion so an informed decision could be made.
I've got a question about that. The traffic signal is serving the development across the street, correct?
It's serving both, actually, the development to the north and to the south.
Is our decision here tonight, will it have any impact on whether that traffic signal goes in?
That would be a question for Brad, but yeah, I don't think so. It will make a difference.
The traffic signal, even though we believe it, that you believe it may be inadequate, is going in anyway.
That's what my understanding is.
Our decision here tonight is not going to affect that. I guess my real question is there are two possibilities here long term. One possibility long term is it will be or will probably be developed as an office park. Another possibility long term is it may be developed as proposed here tonight. I think one day it will probably be developed. And those seem to be the two alternatives this council is facing. Do we have any opinion as to the difference on what the two alternatives would mean as far as traffic on Holcomb Bridge Road? What difference would there be?
I think when the warrant analysis was done previously with the old site plan, it met the warrants because I think it was a grocery store to the north in the north development, so it met the warrants back then. But now with the current development, traffic is much lower, so in my opinion, it wouldn't meet the traffic warrants now.
Well, here's the question, though.
Traffic was higher before.
Here's the question. We understand DOT is permitted. They're going to allow it to go in, regardless of these warrant studies.
Yes.
My question is, as far as traffic on Holcomb Bridge Road in this location, Do we expect the congestion to be worse under one plan or the other, or is it going to be the same? What's the difference in these two plans the council may have to adopt?
I expect it to be worse either way with either of the two developments if the signal goes in, because if there is no signal, there are other options that could be used, like access from
Is it equally
steeplechase.
worse would be the question. Or do you have an opinion on that? It's bad either way?
I think so. It's going to get worse with the traffic signal in between the two.
And is it the traffic signal that's causing the problem? Or this development?
With that much traffic that already exists on Holcomb Bridge, that's what's going to cause the problem. The development traffic is little comparing to the traffic that already exists on Holcomb Bridge. So it's a lot of traffic to be stopped at just one more location in the middle of two more signals.
So it's fair to say your concern has to do with the traffic light, which we have no control over.
Yes, that's my concern.
And you don't see a significant difference do you see any significant difference in the office development on 6 acres versus the daycare, car wash development on 3 acres as far as traffic?
I don't. Although with the office complex, the traffic is going to be distributed in the peak hours, but with the daycare and the car wash, you could imagine it would be distributed throughout the day. So I'm going to tend to say that with the office complex, the impact on peak hours will be greater.
Does the council have any other questions for transportation? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does the council have any other questions for staff? We can always, if there are questions unanswered after we hear from the presentations, we can go back and hit those. Councilmember Price.
There was one thing, and is Keith here? Regarding the fiscal impact that wasn't quantified, but there was a comment about the fiscal impact on the project.
I have the information. What's the specific question? He and I discussed it this afternoon.
Just that, was there any quantitative analysis of that?
The quantitative analysis results from based upon square footage of feasibility analysis that we use to look at additional services in an incremental value compared to those costs for each, either the proposed development or the settlement development, compared to the revenues from impact fees and ad valorem taxes that would be collected, property taxes that would be collected on the parcel. There is an incremental difference. Obviously, in the first year, there's a substantial difference because of the amount of impact fees. But over the life to 2031, there's about a $40,000 difference. $40,000 less impact on the settlement development compared to the proposed development. However, this is looking at it.
But clear, I'm still not sure what you're saying.
I am saying that if we take a look at in a microscope this parcel only, and we look at the amount of services that would be required to service this parcel under the proposed development versus the settlement development, there's about a 40...
Settlement development in the offices.
Correct. There's about a $40,000 difference net impact in the difference in the anticipated revenues and the anticipated expenditures or costs to deliver services. And obviously the difference in the type of businesses that may be there, like for instance a retail business may require a higher level or a more intense level of public safety services, for instance. It's a model that we use. It's just a tool as a comparison.
So, having said all of that, you said there was a difference. Which one would cost us more to service over that 30-year time period?
Under this analysis, the proposed development.
Do we have
by $40,000?
Did we look at the revenue side?
Yes, that is the net. I'm telling you the net difference.
Over 30 years, it's about
$40,000.
About $1,000 a year, maybe.
Right, roughly, yes.
So, now I understand your answer. Thank you. Does the council have other questions for Kay? Other questions of council for staff? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is a discrepancy between the stream buffer that was approved under the plan several years ago during the settlement and where the stream buffer currently is. And I'd like to understand how does that impact the proposed, or the, let's call it the settlement plan, what can be built there versus what was agreed to.
Basically, at the time of the settlement, the developer is entitled to vested development rights if he expends a certain amount of money on the property. This developer did sue us, spent a lot of money, so it would be my, it's not 100%, but it would be my opinion that they would be entitled to develop what is on the approved plan that was the settlement plan at the time.
Well, I guess to be more specific with my question, we now have a stream going underneath one of the buildings, and that's, I understand the city approves something, but the state also has some say as to what gets developed here because these are state waters. So how does the stream that is now in this, I guess, upper right corner of that proposed development, how could that building get built if there's a stream there?
Well, they would be required to meet the state buffers, so that probably would not get built.
Okay.
But where we defined the stream beginning before on the plan was the red X that Brad's pointing to there.
Right. So the building in the upper right-hand corner, the office building, probably could not get built because it's on state waters. But per our discussion earlier, that square footage potentially could get moved somewhere else in one of these other footprints and become a multiple-story building, but not in the three to the left.
And again, that's not a slam dunk one way or the other. That's kind of one of the gray areas where they would have to. They have an approved site plan. I'm not sure they could move that square footage to another building without getting it rezoned, because it was subject to the site plan.
Okay, so moving that would probably trigger rezoning.
If they were so inclined. Now they also would have an argument that we'd be taking property from them by changing where we define where the stream was before to where it is now. So
that's not our definition; it's the state's definition, isn't it?
Well, it depends on who makes the determination, and that would be us.
All right, so it's somewhat of a gray area. What I'm trying to establish is what is actually buildable under the current scenario versus the proposed scenario. And I understand there are significant grades here which may impact all that, but I think that stream buffer is pretty important in that whole discussion.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, they would have to be 25 feet from state waters.
Which, Mr. Townsend, that would be the first dotted line off of your dark blue dotted line, is that correct? So most of the buildings would be okay. It's just that one that would be within the.
Unless they got a stream buffer variance, which is possible. So, but I don't think they would build on top of the stream.
On top of
stream
the stream.
head.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Price.
Just curious, it seems like the main, or one of the main complaints I've heard is the impact on noise. Have we done any analysis of the anticipated noise?
The staff did not receive any analysis related to the noise. I mean, there were conversations related to, I believe, the blowers for the car wash. There was a representation at the Planning Commission that the blowers were interior of the building. and they did provide, I believe, a decibel number. I don't remember the specific number at Planning Commission, but that was provided by the applicant at that time.
So nobody has suggested what the decibel level would be at any residential area?
No. No.
Any other questions? This time we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Don Rollator, and my address is 11660 Alpharetta Highway, Suite 630, City of Roswell, Georgia. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant. We have a great many interested parties, experts, engineers, and others who can address the concerns that appear to have been created by this rezoning application. We have noted that there's been a great deal of conflicting information. There's been a lot of confusion. There's been an evolution of the plan, which was based on resident feedback. And our intent tonight is to give you the facts regarding this application and to let you make your decision based upon the facts. We spent an intensive amount of time and effort with the most affected homeowners who are in the Glens, and 2 points have stood out and made the most impact that we can see. Basically, under this application, the buffer has doubled from 3.1 acres to 6.2 acres, and we have discovered that the large majority of the affected homeowners in the Glens are in support of this application. We will address both of those during the course of our discussion. This property lies between a storage facility that's zoned commercial and a Pike's Nursery that's zoned commercial. Across the street is a shopping center, probably most famous for TJ's, which is out in front of it, and I think most of us have been there. If you go east down Holcomb Bridge Road from this property, it's a substantial commercial node. There's a huge amount of activity there, including McDonald's and AutoZone, Kroger, many other things I could name for you. This request is to zone the front 3.5 acres of this property C3 to permit 3 uses: a Mr. Clean car wash, a Tide Cleaners, and a child development center. The property was zoned OP in 2005, and I think Brad has discussed all of the events that have transpired since then. I think what is important to note is that since the settlement of the lawsuit, it has been continuously offered for sale as OP property with a qualified broker comfortable with office and commercial zoning who's a resident of Horseshoe Bend. The net results of that 5+ acres have been one preliminary interest for the bank site that went away and nothing else. Here's the problem we have presently with the office market in North Fulton County. There's about a 20.9% vacancy rate. There's a continuing loss of square footage of office, 69,673 feet of negative absorption in the second quarter, and the submarket's losses year to date of more than 141,000 square feet. I'm referring to the newest survey by Jones Lang LaSalle, who generates office numbers for the Atlanta market. That was in my email this morning. I read it and looked at it. So we have a distinct problem trying to deal with this property as office property. What I want to next cover for you is a discussion of the stream buffer and buffer areas so that you can understand what's happening there. We believe strongly that we are entitled to develop the plan that was approved by court order in 2005. I don't think a city or an applicant can go back on its word after the judge has signed it. So we believe that's the correct zoning of this property presently. But we have noted that the state stream buffers have changed. We asked our engineer to come in and study this property with the new stream buffer in effect and to tell us what the net impact was. If you look on your screen, it constitutes the loss of that building, and it kind of nicks the one next to it. It's about a 2% change over the old stream buffer. So it's a minimal impact, does not affect the ability of the developer to build the perpendicular crossing of the green area and to continue the road where it was and to develop those office buildings as they are. So there is some impact from the new state stream buffer. It is minimal. I think that's the point I'd like to make there. Let me talk to you a little bit about the project. We want to take the front 3.5 acres and we want to develop those in a fashion that works in conjunction with everything that's around it. Facts of life are that everything that's around it is commercial. If we take the front 3.5 acres and develop it C3, we develop 20,006 square feet. We're presently approved for 54,000 square feet of space, and if you nick out that one building from the stream buffer thing, that's still about 50,000 square feet of developable space. We want to drop it to 20,000 square feet. We want it zoned C3. What we would propose to do with the entire remainder of the property is to leave it zoned OP to create a conservation easement acceptable to the city and the city attorney and put that 6.2 acres permanently in a buffer and a protected space for the benefit of the homeowners in Horseshoe Bend who live in the Glens, who are closest to it. If you look at the green space and the impact, we're dropping more than 50% in square footage, and we're increasing buffer twice, 3.1 to 6.2. I think that's significant. If you look at the approved site plan versus the proposed site plan, under the old site plan, property lines in Horseshoe Bend were from 145 feet away on the north to 292 feet away on the south. Under the new plan, those distances are increased to between 401 feet on the north and 658 feet to the south. That's a significant difference. I want to skip over, and I don't want to throw you a curve, the description of what the uses will look like. I want to address sound with you, if I may. So let me give Joe Tocco a minute to catch up to me. When the issue of sound impact arose, we had our engineers come on site and analyze this and take a look at what we expected. I'll give you the findings first. The findings were, with that much distance between the operating facilities and the property lines in the Glens and Horseshoe Bend, the projected decibel level is about 50? About 50 decibels. Put that one up. 50 decibels, when you look at what sound means on a board, 50 decibels is about the same noise as a quiet street. Normal shoot, I can't talk tonight. I went to the golf tournament too long. Normal conversation is 60 decibels. This does not factor in the amount of green growth in that 600 feet, nor the ambient road noise from Holcomb Bridge Road, which generates almost 49,000 trips per day. So the net answer on the sound analysis is, at the property line, there is no impact. All right, let's go back to the other. We have proposed in this development 3 uses, and those are a Tide Cleaners, which is state-of-the-art. Procter & Gamble has come out with several new ventures and ideas in the consumer market. They have gone into the upscale cleaning business and the upscale car wash business. They are the newest products that they have on the market. Let me take a minute while we zoom out and in. That's the appearance of the standard cleaners that we build these days. This is the appearance of today's product with the Mr. Clean Car Wash. And then we have the daycare center as well, which is a 2-story structure. I think the most important point I want to make next on those items is to discuss the environmental impact. Obviously, there's no environmental impact from the daycare center. There's one question. We have asked for a variance to allow a total of 8,000 square feet of playground space. The state requirement is 6,000 square feet. Right now, the request here is from the city standard is over 20,000 square feet. What that would do is encroach into the area that we have created as a buffer and a conservation easement for these impacted homeowners. The owner-operator of the daycare center has committed to allowing no more than 40 children on the playground at any one time. Their total number of children is limited to 180 children, and I believe that the staff has no objection to that variance request. But that's the environmental impact there. On the Mr. Clean Car Wash, 80% of the water is recycled. It consumes approximately 20 gallons of water per car. You'd use 150 to 500 depending on how neat and clean you are. It releases 0 soaps and chemicals into the waterways. So our statement is, both on the car wash and on the cleaners, there's nothing goes into the ground and nothing goes into the sewer that wouldn't come out of a home. So they're environmentally sound. The Tide Cleaners uses a silicone-based product. They don't use PERC, which is a deadly poison. This silicone-based product is harmless. The state of California's review said there's no environmental impact to it. So it is environmentally green, environmentally state-of-the-art. Both of those uses are. Okay. If we'd like to address traffic, we've taken a look at traffic to see what it does. Our traffic study says that the overall impact of this is less than the impact that would be generated by the office park that's approved at this point in time. It'd be less. If you can look at the peak hour yields, you can see what you have there. So there is no negative impact of traffic from permitting this development versus the office development that's approved presently. Next, we would discuss whether or not this development is speculative in nature. And what I would tell you is that the owner of the property has a commitment from Mr. Clean, whose CEO is here with us tonight. It has a commitment from the Tide Cleaners, whose principal engineer is here with us tonight, and has a commitment from Children of America, the child care user. So there is no speculation here. If you approve this project as fast as the law permits, they would seek land disturbance permits and building permits for these uses. None of this is going to sit vacant. It's committed right now. They wouldn't do it. It's also important to note that the developer and owner of this property is the owner of the shopping center across the street, which has been revamped, reloaded, redone, and turned back into a viable part of this city. So if you ask, is Ramco Gershenson on the team, they know how to do the right thing, look across the street. It's the best thing I can tell you. I think past that, I want you to understand from the guys who did the legwork the efforts that were involved in dealing with the affected homeowners. Our team didn't have the availability of a complete email list, other means of distribution of information, so they did it the old-fashioned way. They went on foot, door to door, before weekends. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Cochran and Mark Naranjo and let them tell you a little bit about what they went through and what they found. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sean Corcoran, and along with my partner, Mark Naranjo, we are franchisees for the Mr. Clean Car Wash. As Don just said, for the last 4 weekends, Saturday and Sunday, Mark and I each had our own board, which we used to walk around the neighborhood and tell the story of what this was all about. We had heard that a lot of folks had questions about what this project was all about. Would it be dirty? Would it be noisy? And so we didn't have the benefit of email lists, et cetera. So we thought that what we would do is take these boards and walk around, and we went to the most affected homeowners and told the story. Well, yeah, and this board illustrated the existing approved plan and the application plan. And we went around to answer questions, address concerns, get input from homeowners, find out what was on their mind, and hopefully at the end of those conversations get their support, which we did. We ended up having a lot of conversations with homeowners, got to know them pretty well. These conversations could go anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes with the homeowner over those weekends. So we're going to get into a little bit of the specifics of what we found, and Mark's going to start.
Sure. So my name is Mark Naranjo, and as Sean mentioned, I'm the other partner that's part of the Mr. Clean Car Wash. So let me just make one thing clear, and that is, this is Sean and I's first foray into starting a business. So we are not big-time developers. We're just simply two guys who are taking a chance and investing our hard-earned money and our savings because this is something that we believe in. We chose the Mr. Clean concept, quite candidly, not because it was the least expensive. It is probably the most expensive concept to develop. But we did it because we wanted something that we could be proud of, not just the homeowners, many of whom are behind me tonight. As Sean mentioned, we did not have the luxury of email distributions to get people's opinions, so we did it the old-fashioned way, which I honestly think in the end proved to be beneficial because we were able to get so much information. And as Sean mentioned, we found that for one reason or another, there was a lot of misinformation that was floating around. So we started off by going to the homes that were most affected by this project. And by definition, those were the homes that property lines abutted the back end of this project and the homes directly across the street. It's the homes in the Glen. And our thought process was, these are the residents that are going to have to live with whatever decision you make here tonight. We felt that it was appropriate to listen to them first. There are 28 homes whose homes either abut the back end of that property line or are directly across the street. We knocked on all 28 doors. We had conversations with 25. There were 3 that were never home that we could never get in touch with. Out of those 25 that we talked to and had a fact-based conversation showing them the diagrams that you saw here, 24 expressed no problems with this project and had no objections with it. We had 1 that was unfavorable to this project. So those are the most affected constituents who felt that their voices were not necessarily being represented accurately. We then went one step out and we started to look at the homes that were next most affected. We knocked on 52 doors. We had fact-based conversations with 40 individuals. 36 of those individuals had the same opinion as the Glens that were most affected, and that is they had no problems with this project, they had no objections to it. We had 4 that for one reason or another did not want the project. So no matter how you look at it, whether it be the homes that are most affected or the next layer out, 90 to 96% of those individuals, when presented with the facts, just the same information that you've seen here tonight, the same information that you'll be rendering your decision on, they had lots of questions, as Sean mentioned. They came to the same conclusion that many people have, and that is, why would I not go for this project as opposed to the other? And it's interesting to note that of those that said no, and one of the things that Sean and I did when we started this, we have a petition here that Sean will present to you that was signed. We felt that it was a little inaccurate and disingenuous of us to just come in with a petition with signatures on it. Because I would suggest to you that it's not a function of how many signatures did you get, but how many people said no in the process. So if you have 100 signatures that said yes and 400 said no, and you're just presenting the 100 that said yes, that's giving you an inaccurate information. We wanted to be unscrupulously candid and forthright with you. So everyone that said no, that did not sign our petition, we kept track of those individuals so that we could present to you the facts, so that you could make an honest, fact-based decision. And there are some of those individuals in the audience tonight. I recognize them. And Sean and I, nor any of our group, have any problems with those individuals. If you look at the facts and you come to your own conclusion, be it for or against, that's all we were looking for. The reality is this. 96% and 90% of those that are directly affected want this project after hearing the facts. And I think that's the one thing that I'd like to leave you with. It's those voices that haven't really been heard here tonight. Sean?
Okay. One point, or maybe it's a qualifier, is through this process, which, as I said, we've been in the neighborhood calling the last many weekends. At one point, our signatures were called into question, whether or not they were signatures that might be on the opposition's list as well as our list. There became some confusion. So we got word that we really needed to get fresh indication of support or not. So not only did we get signatures to start with, but we went back to try to get those reaffirmed. In the case of the Glens, we were able to get 18 of the signatures reaffirmed out of 22 of the most affected. Some of those, a few others, we were not able to get to, once again, not at home. So there is some slight mystery out there on a few within the Glens. In addition to the Glens, we went to the next most affected part of Horseshoe Bend, which we understand is referred to as the Brentwood section. We knocked on 143 doors in the Brentwood section. We spoke to 83 homeowners out of those 143, many not home. 80 of those, 75 of the 83 that we spoke to were either in favor or had no opposition to the project. 5 said no. So that's what we found from 83 homeowners in the Brentwood section we were able to talk to. So that was the results of our work calling on homeowners in Horseshoe Bend.
I think there's also one other point that I'd like to bring out. And as I said, by having these conversations, we were able to pick up a lot of information and have good conversations. Of those individuals that said, no, I'm opposed to this project, there wasn't a common theme or a common reason when we asked why, and that was, my preference is that nothing be developed on that property. So even though we tried to suggest to them that this is not a something or nothing, again, Sean and I respected that opinion because, again, it was based on first looking at the facts and coming to their own conclusions. But that was the overriding theme.
Graphically, and this is in the Glens, we talked, within the Glens, we spoke to 40 homeowners. We got 36 that either signed or were neutral, and 4. This is total. This is not just the most affected row 1 and row 2. But this illustrates everywhere there's a yellow dot, and I'm not sure how clear it is on your screen, but everywhere there's a yellow box, that means that they signed yes at some point. If there's a yellow box with an X in it, that means we went back again and had the support reaffirmed. And including up until yesterday. We worked this weekend, we worked the last 4 weekends. The 4 red boxes indicate the 4 no's that we know of. Okay? That's it.
Thank you.
Let me very briefly address the remaining issues. In order for this zoning application to be approved, there are certain side matters that need to be considered. I have discussed with you reducing the amount of play space for the daycare center. In addition to that, where we are providing cross-access easement with the Pike site in order to enable the traffic service to the red light, we would need to take the side setback from 5 feet to 0. I don't think there's any objection from Pikes, and it makes good sense from the traffic pattern to get the cross-access easement and alleviate the problems directly on the road. Thirdly, in order to permit the car wash, it needs a conditional use permit. So those 3 requests are part of our application. In closing, at this point, I would tell you that we accept all the conditions that are proposed by the staff, which address contributions for traffic improvement, address the way in which the conservation easement will be created, and address a number of concerns that the staff has had the foresight to cover. We have no objection to any of those. Lastly, I would tell you in summary that if this is approved, the result is that density is reduced, buffers are increased and made permanent and protected in perpetuity. Traffic is improved by the signalized intersection and the cross-access easement. There are no environmental concerns. There's no sound issue. And the most affected neighbors are protected and are generally in support of the project. I thank you for your consideration and reserve remaining time for rebuttal.
At this time, I'll recognize any organizations that are here tonight, and then I'll recognize individuals. So if you represent an organization and you'd like to be heard, if you'd raise your hand. Well, we have questions for council. I apologize. Mr. Rollator, if you'd return to answer questions of council.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Rollator. How are you doing today?
I'm a little sunburned, but I'm fine.
Well, I was at the same golf tournament at 6:30 this morning, so I know what you're talking about. I do have 2 questions for you, sir. One of them that you were showing the facade of the car wash, and I'm sorry, but up here it was very dark. I could not see what the facade looked like as the car wash. I'd like to see what that looks like. And my understanding is it's a modular building. Is that correct, sir? Is it a modular prefab building?
That is correct.
And is there a way that we can have a clearer picture of what that looks like? Because I don't think it's in our
Let's see if we can
packet.
zoom these up.
And while they're doing that, I do
down.
have another question for you. While I appreciate that you gave us the percentage of vacancies of office, could you also give us the percentage of the vacancies of commercial? I would like to have, an even side. You gave us the... No, I'm being serious. I like to have both sides. You gave us a percentage of vacancy office at 20.9%.
Yes.
And for me to get a feel of what's going on here, could you give me a percentage of the commercial vacancy also?
I cannot address it, but I believe our broker is here, and when he speaks, I would ask him to do so.
I would appreciate that. Again, I like to have both sides of that. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Question for staff on this facade. Will this project have to go to design review board?
Yes, it will.
Are we ruling on the facade and the elevations tonight?
No, you're not, sir.
I'm just trying to...
Just curious, sir. Just curious.
All right. Other questions? Councilmember Diamond.
Mr. Rollator, it looks like in the settlement the 3.1 acres was set to be in a conservation easement already. Has that happened?
It has not.
The property has not been developed.
Okay. I guess it just seems like an act of good faith for the neighbors if that was already part of the deal, but okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rollator, the plan that we have shows a proposed daycare of plus or minus 10,000 square feet. What's the actual square footage of that building?
10,000 square feet.
So it's not plus or minus, it will be 10,000 square feet. Okay. Explain to me again, or to us, the rationale for the reduction in the play area for the children. I realize that is greater than the state standard. It's something Roswell is proud of and something we like to have for our children. So is there a reason with this large buffer we can't have room for our kids to play?
I would answer that two ways for you, Mr. DiPolito. The first thing is that the square footage assumed on the staff report assumes that all the children are out on the playground at once. If the owner commits to only allowing 40 children at a time, then I think that's not apples and oranges. That's a different matter. Secondarily, the state is 6,000. We've offered 8. But the real impact is, I don't think the developer has any strong objection to adding additional play area if that's for the benefit of the children. It just encroaches into the buffer area that was being provided to the residents of Horseshoe Bend. So if it's more important to have that much more play area for the children and reduce by that much whatever the buffer area is, it's not a major issue for the developer. It's fine.
Okay, thank you. Would you also explain the other variance? I didn't follow what the need was there.
I'm sorry?
The other variance that's being requested regarding the landscape?
Well, the variance, again, was for the size of the playground.
Right.
Number 2 was the side setback between us and the nursery Pikes. Under the ordinances, it should be 5 feet. If we're going to do the cross-access and the driveway to the red light, then that needs to go away, and that's the reason for that request. It only impacts the nursery.
Well, actually, it's a reduction in the minimum landscape strip, is it not?
That's correct.
I'm not following. You said setback, so I'm confused as to what.
I'll let Brad answer that.
What is the request?
The clarification, you can actually put that in. The clarification is between the parcel 1 and parcel 2, the tide and the car wash. This is where the landscaping is being reduced from the 5-foot requirement between those two parcels to the 0.
So it's not between the car wash?
No, the car wash location is here. That is being actually pushed over onto the car wash, or to Pike's Nursery property. The 5-foot landscaping, when they realign to line up with the signal.
I stand correct.
Is there any reason we need to have a variance for a landscape strip for the property you own both sides of?
If they're ever sold off and they are identified as separate parcels, then one of them would be non-conforming without providing the landscaping.
So it would be in their best interest to go ahead and provide that. Or
a variance granted, correct.
Okay. My next question has to do with square footage overall. I noticed there's quite a number of canopies, detail bays, vacuum enclosures, all of which we saw in some of our photographs that have covers, so there's actual structures. Now, I understand from our square footage requirements that you don't include those in the number. You gave us a number of 20,066 square feet. What's the overall square footage of all these ancillary structures that we're going to have in addition to the building square footage?
Just a moment, we're figuring that, and I'll give it to you. In the meantime, let me give you the question regarding the retail vacancy rate. The commercial vacancy rate, as I understand it, computation of the broker, is 12% presently.
That was the last of my questions, Mr. Mayor. If we want to wait on the answer to the one, I'd be willing to defer to Mr. Eichelhart.
Councilmember Eichelhart. Well, actually, not a question, but I had asked this question earlier today. So from staff in our economic development department, I got the retail vacancy east of 400. So that may not, it's obviously a different number probably than the entire city. But east of 400, the retail vacancy rate as of today was 22%. And interestingly enough, the same number from 2005 in terms of a quantifiable number is about 400,000 square feet. Today it's 531,000 square feet. So that's, again, east of 400.
Any other questions?
I think we've got an answer coming now. Give me your name.
Hi, I'm Bruce Arnett. I'm with Mr. Clean Car Wash. And thank you for hearing us today, Mayor and City Council. The question regarding the square footage of the canopies is going to be somewhere in the range of 3,600 to 3,800 square feet.
Just to follow up on that, I guess if that's around 3,600 square feet, then we're to 3,800. The total square footage then is about 23,900 of structures. So,
More or less.
So that's about 10 to 15% more than we're talking with just the building. And I think that's significant because every structure on the site is important. And then on the flip side to that, the currently approved development is 54,000 square feet, about roughly 8,700 of which is not buildable. So that really would be about 45,300. So there's still a significant difference, but that we've kind of narrowed the gap there between what is
If the additional office square footage couldn't be relocated on the site.
Right. Which we've determined would require rezoning more than likely.
I think, like they say in wrestling, it remains to be seen.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rollator, a clarification on this vacancy. Was that for all of North Fulton County on both the vacancy of the office and commercial?
I believe that was for all of North Fulton County.
You don't have anything for east of 400 or for all of the city of Roswell then?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
With me.
Other questions for the applicant at this time? Hearing no further questions at this time, we'll hear from the public, and I would begin by recognizing the organizations who are represented here tonight. Yes, sir, come forward if you'll give us your name and your address and who you're representing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Michael Brennan. I live at 8450 River Birch Drive in the beautiful Horseshoe Bend Homeowners Association. I'm the president of the Horseshoe Bend Community Association. We're a community of about 1,275 homes. We are on the east side of Roswell, and we've brought several of our members here tonight. In fact, I'd like to, if I could, recognize those people who are not watching Monday Night Football. And I don't want just people who I believe are opposed or for, but I'd like all the residents of Horseshoe Bend in attendance tonight to stand up. That would be great if we could see that.
Welcome to City Hall.
Fantastic. Thank you all. You can have a seat. I do appreciate your time. I appreciate the consideration. We've had a chance to meet and speak with several members of council. We've also had a chance to meet with developers. If I could, I will try to not go back too far chronologically or historically, but I do want to talk about how we were first approached about this project. It was very similar to the approach that other developers, including folks who put together the Target development, the people who have come to us about the Centennial Walk area. They all came to our community and asked us our opinion. They asked us our input. They listened to us, and we believe there is some quality development that's come out of that. We were approached similarly around, I want to say, the November time frame by the folks at Mr. Clean Car Wash. They came to our Horseshoe Bend board meeting. They sat down and did a great presentation, talked to us about what their plans were, what they wanted to do, and asked us what our thoughts were. We withheld judgment, I think appropriately so, because we thought this is a pretty large project. It's a pretty heavy impact on the community and impacts the quality of life in our neighborhood. We put together a question that we put out to the community. We decided to survey our residents. Before we did that, we opened up our newsletter. This is a paper document that's produced monthly, and we asked the folks at Mr. Clean Car Wash and Tide Dry Cleaners, actually we asked sort of their representative to give us as much information as they wanted. They sent us the best looking pictures, marketing materials, whatever they like. They can have anything they want. So they did have a distribution channel for their message, and that message did go out. That went out in the beginning of this year. We then surveyed our residents, and we got what you typically get in a community that we feel is being run pretty effectively, and that is we got a pretty short turnout. We got about 110 folks who replied. Overwhelmingly negative in their reply. About 2/3 of the people that actually responded to the survey and called in or emailed in to our community association administrator were opposed to the development, with about the other third being indifferent or in favor of the development. This survey was taken a long time ago, and as I believe the folks here have said, there have been some dramatic changes We're still talking about a car wash. We've now added a dry cleaner. We've now added a daycare center. So we decided, after the Planning Commission meeting, where we had also come to the Planning Commission committee with a survey and some signatures, that we decided we better redouble our efforts. We sent an additional survey out. This was electronic, and we sent that out on September 7th. This is after all the plans had been put out in front of us, after competing messages had gone back and forth. And we had a total of 252 responses. I'd like to go ahead and give those to Mr. Townsend because he needs some more paper, and submit those for you folks to look at. Of those 252 respondents, 230 of those people, 230 residents of Horseshoe Bend Community Association, were opposed to the rezoning. 14 folks who responded were in favor of the rezoning, and 8 people just decided either not to check the box or didn't calculate it correctly and didn't get that box checked. So simple math on that is about 91.2% of those people who responded to the survey opposed the rezoning. 5% were in favor of the rezoning. And this actually accounts for about 19% of our community association. I've been on the board for 5 years. I've been its president for the last 3 years. We've never had that many people show up to a meeting. We've never had that many people respond. I mean, we've done lots of things. We've threatened to, kick certain breeds of dogs out of the neighborhood, and we still haven't received as many people as we've had. So the folks in our neighborhood are passionate about that, as evidenced by the folks who are behind me tonight. When they all stood up, I think you saw a lot of people, or some folks that had green badges on, saying, I believe, signifying support for the rezoning and support for the car wash and the businesses that are being put in place. I'm not here tonight to represent just the people who don't have a green placard on. I'm here to represent everybody in our neighborhood because I support I would like to see our community stay protected. I would like to see our residents stay protected. I'd like to see the residents who are immediately impacted protected. What I don't have, and I don't have a problem with those people who are in favor of this development. I do have a problem with the situation, the choice that they're being forced to make. What they're essentially being told is, we've been sitting on some property for a long period of time. We've gone to court and we've settled on it, and we now have a decision in place, and that decision we'd like to go ahead and change. And we're going to hold this over everybody's head and say we're going to put some condos right behind your house and ruin your wooded view. And that's not exactly the case. I'm passionate about this because as I've watched this process progress, I've seen the Design Review Board, who had taken a look at this. Neil Gasway stated that the applicant should throw their plans away and start all over. So the Design Review Board had some pretty serious things to say about it. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to reject the plans. Transportation has thrown out their study and has talked tonight, I think, pretty effectively to the case. And I'd like to go on record as saying, as we, the Community Association, Horseshoe Bend, and its elected representatives are standing here tonight in opposition of the request for rezoning. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Does the council have any questions? Could you share with what was the survey question?
I actually will give you a copy of the survey question, and I'll go ahead and let that be passed to Mayor and Council. It was a very simple question. We felt that rather than we'd put up their marketing materials, email is a great tool in our neighborhood, and it's a great communicating, especially in the Glens. There's a lot of emails going back and forth. So the question was a very simple one. Are you opposed to the rezoning for a car wash, or are you in favor of a car wash being built and the rezoning being placed? That was a very simple question, and they had to check a box.
That's not. Could you show me what went out? I don't think I've got that.
That is what's out.
It said it began stop the car wash rally.
If you look down below it.
Oh, down below it.
Yes, sir.
Let us know your position. Place an X after a statement with which we agree. I do not want to see a car wash abutting the Horseshoe Bend community. I approve of the project and would like to see the car wash built. That would be the question.
That is the question.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes, sir. We have some other members of our board that are here tonight to talk about not only what we don't want to see, but actually what we do want to see. We have some folks who I think bring a unique perspective to our presentation and to our position. And I'd like to, unless there's any other questions.
At this time, I've recognized the organization. I think I think we need to give, in fairness, if there are any other organizations, if they want to be heard from tonight, and then we'll hear from people in general.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
they're part of our organization.
I
just thought that's
understand.
what you
I just
meant.
know that your organization has had a presentation. We want to hear from all of those people.
Thank you, sir.
But I want to hear if there's any other organizations that want to be heard from at this time.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to try to be
You've always been fair with us, Jerry.
fair on hearing from them. Do we have any other organizations tonight who wish to be heard? Yes, sir. I see your hands up.
I'm not sure I'm an organization, but I do represent what we're calling the Friends of the Glens.
You represent a group of people.
Yes.
We'll call you an organization for tonight.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Can we bring the map back up with the homes?
If you'll give us your name and address, please.
My name is Jeff Herr. I live at 8545 Edwarton Drive, Roswell, Georgia, in the Glens. And I'm going to show you right where I live. I live right here. So I feel like I am probably one of the two most impacted people by this development. Besides being one of the most impacted residents, I'm also a professional environmental engineer. I have 27 years of experience, and I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Georgia. I'm here to speak for the residents most impacted by the development, and we are in strong support of the rezoning effort. These supporters include 8 of the 10 property owners which connect to the development, basically all of the property owners along the perimeter. The 9th homeowner didn't want to get involved because he had been kind of drugged through the mud with the previous times that this has been developed. The 10th homeowner we could never reach. In total, we received signatures of support from 90% of roughly 40 people that live in the Glens, basically what we're considering the most impacted, which is basically in this area. 90% of those residents are in support of this project and the rezoning. As the applicant said, outside of the Glens, roughly 90% of the people that we were able to reach are also in favor. One thing I would like to comment regarding the opposition statement that they had, 230 people against. What we found when we talked to the people in the Glens, they were against this project until we sat down with them and we showed them the board and we explained basically the options. So to me, I don't know that the 200 people that voted against this really understood both sides of the story. We support the rezoning for these following reasons, and I'll try to be brief. The commercial land use is consistent with the surrounding commercial land use. The development will create jobs and revenue for the city, county, and state. The developer is proposing state-of-the-art businesses which are aesthetically attractive. The development is substantially less intensive than the approved office professional plan. I think we ended up at 24,000 square feet versus 48,000 square feet. And we're only going to develop 3.5 acres of the property instead of 6.6. No, this is really the most important thing to us as homeowners in the Glens. No development will occur within 400 feet of the Glens as compared to 60 feet. I know on the one figure, one of the buildings in the office professional was 150, but on that plan, there's pavement. There'll be cars within 60 feet of our lots. Landscaping will go beyond what is required by code, and one thing that we asked for was an evergreen buffer along the edge of the development, basically between the wooded area and the development. There will be less traffic with the new development plan versus the office professional plan. And I also believe if you think about people that use car washes and dry cleaners, it's probably going to be part of another trip that they're already doing. The office professional would draw people in from all over the community to that new office professional park. We will no longer have the eyesore along Holcomb Bridge Road, that vacant piece of land. And really, it's very stressful to not know what's going to be developed in your backyard. I've gone through this twice already, and I really don't. I mean, it's very stressful to go through it over and over again, just the unknown of what's going to happen with that property. Most importantly, development will only occur along Holcomb Bridge Road, which where it should. 6.2 acres of currently wooded natural land will remain undisturbed by placing it in a conservation easement in perpetuity. This will ensure our home values and our beautiful woods and our deer in our backyards will always be there. It's extremely important to us to have that 6.2 acres, though, protected legally in some type of a conservation easement. It's been very difficult for us since our own homeowners association has been against us. We've not had the same resources. Yes, there was information put in an early newsletter, but within the past month, we have not been able to reach very many of the people that live in Horseshoe Bend. I know some of the arguments, and I'd just like to touch real quickly on a few of the arguments that the opposition has made. Traffic, I think we've discussed enough. There will be less with the new development versus the office professional. Noise, not even considering the dense tree cover, basically the sound level at the closest property line in the Glens will be less than background sound level. There's been a lot of talk, there was a lot of discussion at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting about pollution. The activities of dry cleaners and car washes are permitted and monitored by the City of Roswell, the Georgia Environmental Protection Division, and the U.S. EPA. You have to get permits to build something. There is monitoring and inspections during construction. And then they'll have to get NPDES permits, which require annual inspections and reports submitted to the permitting agencies. The car wash is better than washing your car at home because at home you use a lot more water, plus that water eventually reaches a lake or the river. The fact is that these businesses will not create any pollution. The opposition has stated that the existing 3.1 acre buffer will remain even if this rezoning is denied. That's true. But there'll be pavement within 60 feet of our homes potentially, and potentially 1 or 2 story office buildings within 150 feet. The opposition may state, they stated this during the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, that the rear 3.1 acres of the 6.6 acre office professional development cannot be built due to steep slopes and stream. I think we've addressed that tonight, and that at least 48,000 square foot of buildings and that 6.6 acres can be developed. I just want to mention one thing. There have been rumors circulating that my wife and I have a financial interest in this development. The fact is we have no financial interest in this development except for the value of our home and that of our neighbors. We, the residents most impacted by this development, I'd like everyone here in support of this rezoning effort to stand up, please. Everyone in support of this. Respectfully ask you to approve the zoning request and new development plan. Please preserve our property values and our quality of life. Before you make your decision, ask yourself, if you were one of us, if you lived right up against this property, what would you prefer to have in your backyard? You could have either woods and wildlife or an office park. Thank you very much.
Are there any other organizations? Are there any other organizations who have not been heard from tonight? I will go back to the Horseshoe Bend organization to hear more from them because we've heard from both organizations. We'll hear from the rest of the Horseshoe Bend organization.
Good evening again. Scott Hedge, 325 Watercrest Drive in Horseshoe Bend. I am one of the Horseshoe Bend Community Association board members and am the external communications chair for for our organization. Just wanted to touch on two things, and Andy McGarry, who's our vice president, is here and would like to speak to a couple issues as well. First, the question has come up of what would we like to see at this site. We've learned recently of some interested folks who may be considering this site for an indoor recreation facility. I believe that's consistent with office professional under certain conditions. We would be actively in support and interested in that development. It's far too early for them to have any concrete information about that. I think they were contacted over the weekend, or we were. That's one opportunity. We've spoken at Planning Commission and other fora about the option of moving the fire station that's being demolished due to the termites down further Holcomb Bridge Road. Those kinds of uses are consistent with office professional zoning. But the fact of the matter is we've got significant vacant commercial on the east side of 400. The long-term land use plan calls for this property to be office professional. We'd like to see you can stick with the long-term plan. There are certainly a number of other commercial zone properties where the applicant can go. The other thing I wanted to touch on is to go back to an exchange, I think, between Councilman DiPolito and Mr. Davidson, in which Mr. Davidson said that he didn't think that he thought there might be vested rights, but that they weren't a slam dunk. I am a land use and environmental lawyer, have been for some time, having my business here in Roswell, and I would agree that the vested rights are not a slam dunk. And I've highlighted based the plans that were in the materials, and I believe this came from zoning staff. You've seen this before tonight, showing each of these 7 buildings on the office plan that lie within either the state mandated 25-foot buffer or the additional buffers that are required under Roswell's ordinance, Article 21. Either for no development or for no impervious surface, and that would include the drive, the parking lots, and those 7 buildings on that plan. While the applicant might have a vested right in the zoning for office professional based on this site plan, I don't believe anywhere in the record did the applicant apply for or receive a site development permit. And I would argue that the site development permit would be the vesting document that would vest the right to encroach in those mandated buffers. Again, if this development were to be built, which I don't believe it would be because of the length of time that has passed since this plan was put into effect, they would still have to apply for and receive a site development permit. There could be other changes on that plan that would make that necessary. Current law should apply, and I think you have the obligation as a local issuing authority under the state law on stream buffers to abide by what the buffers would require at this point. Those are, and the only way that they could get a variance is to show an unnecessary hardship. As is very clear, the front 3 acres are developable, and for that reason, I don't believe that they would be able to show the necessary hardship to get a variance from those stream buffers. How that affects where that square footage goes, I don't know, but I would submit that there is no vested right in the ability to encroach on state or local stream buffers. That's what I had. My colleague Andy has some additional thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Andy McGarry, 8595 Havenwood Trail, Roswell, Georgia. Vice President of the Horseshoe Bend Homeowners Association. Do we have one of the maps that were put up that shows the intersection? Is that something that can pop back up? Mayor, what I'd like to just address tonight is not being an advocate, but talking basically as a real estate expert and representing my neighborhood, all 1,270 homeowners, not just the people in the Glens, some of their thoughts and concerns about the east entrance. I'd like the arrow. That aerial. Yeah, that'd be good. If you look at our east entrance into Horseshoe Bend, and I certainly can't
blame you, Mayor or Council, because you didn't create this zoning. A lot of this was gifted to us by Fulton County, and we've had to live with it. But at our back entrance, we have a self-storage facility, and they talk about balance and development in our community. But the U-Haul self-storage is a commercial zoning with variance that allows yard storage. You can't find that unless you go to an industrial or an M1 zoning category. If you look at the honey baked ham that turned into Paint the Town Faux, that has variances as well. We have a number of issues that have become really the eyesore at our back entrance, and that's what 1,270 homeowners are talking about. We have not just commercial uses, these are very unique special uses that are not homogeneous, they're not in balance, and they're not what a lot of our entire homeowners would like to see. The subject property, that parcel is zoned OP. There was discussion about the OP office professional. I think even Mr. Rollator had some interesting data, and I'm a member of NAOP and a member of ICSC. I'm a member of the Appraisal Institute. I'm a REACT member, and a number of these organizations, I know the guys at Jones Lang LaSalle, data search for office information. They do not survey professional office space like owner-user condo space. If you look at the 1 OP property that abuts Horseshoe Bend, which is across from the new Target, it is a beautiful office professional property. It's condominiumized, it's owner-used, and it's 90% occupied. Talk about absorption. There was one space that just went vacant. A mortgage company having to bid, they went out of business. But a doctor has just moved in that space. You can see a sign out there that says opening, accepting clients. This is in balance. This is homogeneous. This is what we would like to have abutting our neighborhood. I know you've all driven by it. It's residential in orientation. It looks attractive. We now are asking you to think about a property that abuts Horseshoe Bend. This is the last parcel, and it is zoned OP. So you think of some information, and there was no advocacy of us board members to try to come in and make a presentation tilted one way or the other. We were just looking at, and Scott has made a great presentation. It's always been our opinion with the OP zoning and with the topography and with the creeks and buffers that our property owners were well protected in the fact that the topography and the environmental issues, it probably would not be developable. That back 6 acres would probably always be protected. And we felt very happy about those people in the Glens. Also, it's been brought up that, this is a commercial zoning. Well, there's 4 food groups. There's office, industrial, commercial, multifamily. A car wash is a special use property. It's not commercial. We've got a very unique special use property. If you go to the mall and see auto indulgence, I remember an appraisal assignment 10, 15 years ago where the days in we're going to develop the auto indulgence, and it was going to be the biggest and the best. Before even the construction was done, it went bankrupt. So an atypical property, a special use property, I don't see an alternate use for it. So I see a risk of a use of a property in a zoning. I saw that mortgage company go out of business and a doctor moved in that OP space, that owner-user. And you talk about demand and feasibility. The only financing you can get today is doctors, lawyers, engineers for office professional space. Condo space, you can get that. You can find financing. It is very feasible. They talked about, well, this is going to be the biggest and best, but you've got a land cost, what's legally possible, what's physically possible, and what's financially feasible. I don't even think this property is financially feasible if it's going to be the most expensive, because you have to return a profit. All I'm saying is council, this is your one vote of a property that abuts Horseshoe Bend. You didn't vote on these others, and you didn't have to make a statement, but you do tonight. This is the only one we're asking to vote on. I would conclude with just, we could debate and go through each one of those little statistical data, noise,
Proper noise study would have LDNs, not decibels, level of day-night noise. We don't have any LDNs. We could go through downzoning issues. Well, they talk about square footage is not the only calculation of a downzoning. We could put an antenna farm on there with 10 square feet. So, you can look at this data a million ways, and everybody's going to kind of get out and produce them a different way. I'm just speaking for 1,270 homeowners that ask us to tell the whole story. I think, in conclusion, the majority of the people within Horseshoe Bend do not want this. Thank you very much.
Are there any other organizations here tonight to speak? At this time, we'll hear from individuals. If you'd like to speak, I want you to move to the front row so we can move it more quickly. I'll recognize this gentleman in the background. After that, I'll be recognized folks who've moved to the front row. You'll give us your name and address, and we ask all the speakers to fill in a speaker card before they leave tonight.
Good evening. My name is Paul Fredrickson. I live at 480 Waite Road, Roswell, Georgia. Lived in Horseshoe Bend for about 30 years. I took the survey. I had the survey that you received, and I voted against the proposal based on those words. I took the email and I opposed it because I wanted to protect those people near this car wash. I live on the opposite end of Horseshoe Bend. And then I read in the Roswell Beacon last week after I voted, gee whiz, the Glens people here are in favor of it. I think that, when the car wash people went around to the Glens and talked about and gave them the whole story, I wish that our homeowners association, which I think is wonderful, we've got a great homeowners association, that survey that they'd sent out had brought both sides to it. Instead of asking us whether or not we wanted to oppose a car wash next to Horseshoe Bend. I just like to take into consideration when you consider the email responses that they have received, for this request. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Did you tell us which side of this issue you were on?
I'm not going to take a stand. I'm not going to take a stand, because it's not really right. I live in the homeowners association. I don't have a dog in the fight at all.
I appreciate that. I just wasn't clear where you stood, and now I know you're...
I want you to take into consideration the votes they had of the opposition to the thing from that email. That's all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Who else would like to speak? If you'll come forward and give us your name and address.
I'm Paul Hirschberg. I live at 1020 Downing Street in Johns Creek, Georgia. I lived in Horseshoe Bend for 15 years up to this time last year. I own the biggest piece of property that is across from the storage center other than Pike Nursery and this parcel of land. I own a 1.8 acre parcel of land that Kids Are Kids Preschool is our building. I own that facility that's across Steeplechase from the storage center. And I was just going to state a couple of facts that I think got left out of this. My building is a 10,000 square foot building, and I'm licensed for 277 children by the state of Georgia. So the number 180 children probably doesn't stack up. It should stack up more like 277. And from a traffic pattern, if anybody's driven by our corner at either 7 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning, or from 3:30 to 5:30, it's gridlocked by my parents going through that corner. I mean, there's large sums of people coming through there early in the day and the end of the day. It's not a thing where the kids are picked up all through the day. They're dropped off first thing in the morning. They're picked up at the end of the day, typically with that number of kids. And I'd be surprised in this market, knowing what I know about the preschools, that somebody would license 180 kids and find it profitable. My partner and I run the number one and number two most profitable Kids Are Kids in Georgia out of 50 franchisees, and we're pretty familiar with what works, the dynamics of a building like that, and what the traffic patterns are and how it operates. The traffic in that area, having lived in Horseshoe Bend for 15 years, that's a very difficult corner to negotiate. There's been a couple fatalities at that corner before the stoplight came in there, and I think the idea by putting another business that's going to have a lot of traffic with another stoplight is going to make it kind of difficult. I'm worried about it clogging my business just by having so many people coming through that area. I think the plans that were up there, I think a lot of people may be feeling that the only way that plan's going to happen is the lesser of two evils, where we're either going to have this plan or we're going to have the other plan. My guess is that this plan plan fails tonight, another plan will come up that will also have lower density than the original plan. And I think there'd be a better plan as far as the number of cars traveling through that intersection. I think a combination of a daycare, a car wash, and a preschool is going to generate a heck of a lot of cars in that immediate area. I think a lot more than people are planning, whereas if there's a strip of office buildings, people will be coming and going at various times during the day. And my largest concern is just the traffic pattern in there. The second concern is that we're probably over daycare and over preschool in that area. Another one just opened up, at the next intersection over behind the AutoZone opened up that's probably licensed for at least 100, 150 kids. The Goddard School opened up 2 years ago, and it's licensed for somewhere around 160 kids. So I would say if you just polled the preschool daycare owners in that area, we're probably way over daycared for that particular neck of the woods.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Who would like to speak next? You raise your hand. Yes, sir, come forward.
My name is Alan Wiles. I have lived in Roswell for 22 years, and I'll be real brief. I think we have too many, or at least enough, car washes right now. The fact remains they do use a lot of water. They are noisy, and I especially like the part where the employees are lounging around out front waiting for cars. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Yes, come forward.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Ferris, my husband Chuck. We live at 8515 Edwarton Drive in the Glens. We are right directly against the wooded area. I'm hearing a lot of probably will not be buildable from our opposition, and our biggest concern is the confirmation easement. We want this 6.2 acres to be a permanent conservation area in our backyards. I feel like a lot of our opposition is not. I hear a lot about I don't want a car wash, but yet people oppose the Waffle House. Yet who are those people eating at the Waffle House? The people that opposed it. I don't understand what 2 more, 3 more commercial buildings on Holcomb Bridge Road are going to make a big difference. And if it protects our backyard, we're all for it. And that's, they sent the email out saying, do you oppose the car wash or are you for the car wash, without any details? Well, of course, everyone's going to say we don't want a car wash. We'd rather have a park for our children to play in if we had our choice. But let's talk about what they're promising us here, and that is they're promising us 6.2 acres of preserved land out there, and that's what we want. That's what the people against the wooded area, we want our land. We don't want to look at an office park, or we don't want to look at parking spots. And we're willing to take the lesser of 2 evils. Yes, we'd like to have a park, if you ask our opinion, but if it's going to be a car wash, we'll take the car wash if it preserves our land. Just the other night, my husband and I were out walking our dog at 10 o'clock and saw 3 deer in our front yard. And every year we have blue jays that come out in our backyard, and they're wildlife out there, if that melts your hearts at all and helps at all, that we want to protect. But I just don't believe the people that are saying that they don't want any more commercial building out there when they're the ones who are out there using it and going to Waffle House, and everyone loves the Studio Movie Grill across the street. I'm a stay-at-home mom right now, and I'm on Holcomb Bridge Road all day long with my children, and I'm very familiar with the traffic, and everyone's excited about the Studio Movie Grill going in. It's brought in a lot of work for the teenagers in our area, and everyone is in support of it. I just don't understand. And then I hear people in our neighborhood talking about, well, we don't like the car wash, but if they put in a cute little, Mexican restaurant where we can walk and have margaritas in the evening and have dinner with our children, we're all for it. It doesn't make any sense. So do you want the commercial use of the land, or do you want it to be an office park? Obviously, I'm getting mixed reviews from my own neighbors. And it's very upsetting. And I don't think that a lot of these people understand the property value of... We bought our house, when we bought our house 10 years ago, my husband and I, we paid $30,000 more for our home because of the wooded view. And we love our wooded view. We have a horrible... Our home is built on a slope where our top floor is 4 stories high. So there's no argument that you cannot build on a creek in our backyard, because I know it's buildable. Anyone can do it. They can put pipes in and they can build on anything these days. So we paid a lot of money for this wooded view. And I know a lot of people have, and along this area. And it's going to lower our property value, and a lot. If we're willing to pay $30,000 more, I know someone else coming in is willing to pay a lot for that beautiful view, and you don't get that anymore in Roswell, up where we live. And it's going to affect the people across the street. It's going to affect the people in Brentwood across the street. All of our property values are going to go down if you build behind our homes. The noise. I'd like to say something about the noise. My husband and I sit on our deck all the time with our children, and we hear occasionally garbage trucks at Pikes. We hear the intercom come on. We have the wooded area, and that's buffered a lot of the noise. If you take those trees down, we are going to hear a lot of more noise. A car wash, if you drive by the car wash on North Point Parkway, no one says anything about the noise at Auto Indulgence. I go there all the time. And I'm sitting there and outside, and I don't hear the noise of my own car being washed. I don't think that's an issue to argue with, the noise. We sit out there all the time, and the woods buffer any kind of noise from Holcomb Bridge, or it's very minimal. I don't think that's an issue for anybody who does not... Everyone, and there are people here that live along the wooded area where we do, and none of us, not one of us, have a complaint about the noise. Thank you. Let me see what else. I have my moment, and I've been on this for a long time. Is there anything I'm forgetting, Teresa? Eddie?
We'll give her an opportunity to speak in a moment.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything, because we are very, very passionate about this, and we want to conserve our land.
My name is Teresa DiLeonardo, and I live at 8530.
If you introduce yourself again, please.
Sure. My name is Teresa DiLeonardo, and I live at 8530 Edwardton Drive. First of all, what I would like to say is I think the majority of these people who are here tonight who are opposed to the car wash and such are not people that live in the Glens, are not people that are going to have their home values affected as those of us who do live in the Glens. And I would also like to say we may be saturated with daycare centers, but we're not saturated with schools. And I would absolutely love to see a school that I can send my children to, that I can walk them to, and where it has an academic program and not just a place where parents drop their children off so they can go to work and then pick them up at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I would just like to see a school in our area that has some value to it and not a daycare center. Thank you.
Who would like to speak next?
Good evening, Mayor and councilmen and women. My name is Danielle Etzbach. I live at 8270 River Birch Drive. And yes, it is Horseshoe Bend. And no, I don't eat at the Waffle House.
You ought to try it.
Yeah, maybe I should. I'm here just to speak because I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I travel Horseshoe Bend every rush hour, morning and afternoon, as well as other times during the day. I am extremely concerned about the traffic. I understand the car wash, and I understand the dry cleaners. That yes, the dry cleaners, some of the folks that are traveling will probably be on that road already. Dry cleaners, hopefully they don't open up at 8 o'clock in the morning, but the school will. And I am telling you, as even this morning, it took me 2 lights to get out of Steeplechase onto Holcomb Bridge Road to turn right, because that traffic is backed up from Nesbitt Ferry all the way past Steeplechase. In addition, it's even backed up between Nesbitt Ferry and Barnwell, and then now it's starting to get backed up between Barnwell and the river. So I think that distance is maybe barely a mile to the river, and it took me over 20 minutes. So now you're going to add a private school. There hasn't been enough information really shared about the school. I don't know if it's a charter school. It sounds like it's a development school, kindergarten through 12th grade. I imagine it's going to be one of those schools where the parents have to drop off their kids, and that is going to add another, hopefully people are carpooling, but, up to 277 parents dropping off their kids. At the same time, there's 1,200 residents, except for the stay-at-home parents, leave the subdivision. And it's just frustrating on our part because it doesn't seem like East Roswell is getting the attention that it needs to make that a very resident-friendly area. There is a lot of talk about all the commercial that's already there. Yes, there is, and unfortunately half of it is empty. And sadly enough, as somebody that travels that road several times a day, even the movie theater attendance has gone down since when it opened. So there is a real concern that that area is oversaturated with commercial. I think we've talked about at the planning committee, there was 5 daycares within an eighth of a mile. There are 5 dry cleaners within an eighth of a mile, and 4 or 5 daycare centers within an eighth of a mile, and 3 car washes within 2 miles. So do we really need to add that kind of development that close? And so, within our other businesses that pay taxes and have been, open for business for a period of time already. Sadly enough, too, with the oversaturation, just this week alone, 2 more foreclosures on our streets in Horseshoe Bend, the residents that would probably be using these facilities. And I just not sure why, again, you would want to build facilities that are predicated on the number of residents that are nearby and should be taken into consideration. So for that, I ask that you agree with your staff and also with the Planning Commission where they both denied this variance already. There's just really no good justification for changing the variance. Thank you.
Who would like to speak next? Yes, sir. Come forward.
Hi, I'm Tom Karras from 300 Willow Wind Court. And really, the east end of east side of Roswell and Holcomb Ridge Road has been on life support, at least from my perspective, for some time. I'm fortunate that some development has taken place, but I look at the car wash, and to me it's a quality of life issue. Can't we have something a little more tasteful put in there? I hate to say it, but it looks tacky. I saw a picture of Mr. Clean Car Wash in another part of town, and it does not look good. It would bring images of Buford Highway and parts of Highway 9 that we're trying to upgrade. And in this case, it appears to me that it's a downgrade of the use of that land. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Bruce Arnett again from Mr. Clean, and starting to get
If you're with Mr. Clean, you're represented by Mr. Rollator, and we'll recognize you in his rebuttal. This is the opportunity for the folks who are not the parties. So I apologize.
Okay.
You need to talk with Mr. Rollator about what comments you want to make in rebuttal. Is anyone else? Yes, sir. Come forward.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilwomen and Councilmen. My name is Charles Andrews. I live at 8400 Edwarton Drive. I had planned to come here and to listen to both sides because both stress very strong arguments. And so I just wanted to approach this as let's sit back and let's think about the process that was in front of you. And by the process, I think about your staff that you have and the planning commissions and the recommendations that they made. And then I just was sitting here and said, okay, so we go through that. And I've lived in Horseshoe Bend and I live in the Glens. And I have a different opinion. I don't want to share it. But go back to the process and how we got to here. And both sides make great arguments. And just leave it at that. Thank you.
We will not recognize anybody twice. Yes, sir, come forward.
Hi, my name is Alex Ketcha. I live at 795 Glenroyal Drive in the Glens. And I see a lot of my neighbors here tonight. Some of us have the same opinions, some of us have differing opinions, but we'll all be friends after tonight, whatever your decision is. Wanted to say a few things. First of all, I spent some time with Mr. Corcoran yesterday. We had a good discussion. After that discussion, I decided that my position was against the rezoning for several reasons. The first was he showed you a picture tonight of houses that voted yes. I originally voted yes because 2 people came to my house about 3 or 4 weeks ago and represented themselves as Horseshoe Bend residents. One was. I'm not sure if the other one was. I found out later that they were both being compensated to go around and have people sign a petition. I found that out the next day, and a lot of what they said, while some of it was untrue, some of it was just misleading. And so I was not real happy about that. I felt like I was being hoodwinked a little bit. I think these both sides should stand on the merits of their argument. So that's one reason I'm against it. Another is, based on our discussion yesterday, Mr. Corcoran told me that he needs 50,000 cars to go through that car wash a year. I don't know whether that's, and maybe you want to tell us, but I don't know whether that's break even or the profit level you need to get to, but that was our discussion yesterday in my backyard. 50,000 cars. 50,000 cars concentrated in that small corner of our neighborhood per year. You can do the math. It's almost 1,000 cars a year that have to go through there. It's noise pollution, just general air pollution. The decibel level from the blower, Mr. Corcoran told me it was about the same as a conversation like I'd be having with you. That was our conversation yesterday, which is fine. But if it's constant for 16 hours or however many hours a day, that's not what I want in my ears or my kids' ears outside of my house. I want to hear my birds chirping. I want peace and quiet. That's why I moved to Roswell. So there are many reasons, pro and con, that you have to weigh. But I would think about how many people here that are wearing these lanyards live in Horseshoe Bend. Can you stand up if you live in Horseshoe Bend? So how about we just say this? For anyone who's in support of the rezoning that lives in Horseshoe Bend, stand up. I've got not 10, 11, I've got 12. If you're against the rezoning and live in Horseshoe Bend, please stand up. I would argue that the people that are most, and you sit down, the people that, maybe seated, people that this is important to are here tonight. People on both sides of this that this is important to are here tonight. And you can look at which way it was weighted. It's very important to me that we preserve our quality of life. I support you in your business wherever you want to do it, except where you're requesting to do it. Because the fact is that most of you don't live where we live. You're here for purely financial reasons. You're here to make a buck. I'm a capitalist with a capital C. I'm with you on it. Not in my backyard. I don't want that car wash in my backyard. I don't want 50,000 cars in my backyard. Teresa, his school, the guy that was here just a minute ago, is NAYCE certified. It's the gold standard.
It doesn't matter.
Wait.
Checked it out.
Hang on. Have a seat, please. This is not the opportunity for rebuttal. These are rhetorical questions, I presume. And everyone's had their opportunity to comment.
I'm a board member of Quality Care for Children, which is the state's point charity for certifying daycares. It's NAYCE certified as the gold standard of daycares. You can look it up. I can prove it to you. And you can walk there closer than the other one.
You need to be addressing the council and not the audience.
Sorry. And anyone, and from where her house is, she can walk there closer than the proposed site. These gentlemen are here for purely monetary reasons. It's your job as council members to protect the citizens of Roswell and Horseshoe Bend. And I don't know how many of these gentlemen are residents of Roswell. They're certainly not residents of Horseshoe Bend. Thanks.
Mr. Rollader will have an opportunity to rebut any comments that he believes are appropriate, so we're not going to be hearing from the audience for rebuttal. Anyone else wish to speak who hasn't been heard from other than the applicant? Yes, sir, come forward.
Hi, Rob Ballinger. I live at 8555 Edwardson Drive in Horseshoe Bend. I'm in support of the proposal for the car wash. And just, I don't want to echo all of the things that the folks in the Glen have already said, but I think it's critical when you look at the amount of people here that maybe not support it versus the people that do. The Glens is a very small portion of the overall Horseshoe Bend community. Another point I'd like to make, I heard the 50,000 car number thrown out there. Well, there's 50,000 cars that go by every day. It's a very small percentage that it would have to be that they would have to be successful. But I don't have finance in the game, but I'm just saying I don't see the incrementality of traffic or commotion in the area like that. But I think Mr. Herr said that he was one of two people that this majorly impacts. I think I'm probably the other person. I live right next door to him, and I certainly don't want to wake up to a parking lot in the morning when I have a beautiful tree line or woods out there. But certainly in support of the new proposal.
Who else wishes to be heard? Yes, come forward.
Hi, I'm Kim Harris Stevenson. I live in Horseshoe Bend. In 1990, I moved to the apartments next to TJ's and watched A&P move out. I lived there 5 years, bought a condominium, and 6 years, and then 10 years ago moved to Horseshoe Bend. So it's not just a Horseshoe Bend thing. It's a 3-mile stretch that's been empty and yuck for years. And that TJ's, I'm so glad they fixed it, but at least 10 years it was an empty, gross, worse than Buford Highway. So it's not, and I understand the people that live in the Glens, and I don't mean to be ugly, but when when we look for a house, we look for a house with 2 deep backyards, so we see woods, and you need to check into things like that, and I do feel bad for them. I think the plan that they have is much better than what I thought it would be, and I think the green space is great. It's just we don't need another car wash or daycare center or dry cleaners. And the dry cleaners across the street that had been in business at least since 1990 went out of business. So I don't understand the rationale of putting businesses on top of each other over and over until somebody has to close, and then it leaves another shell. So, thanks.
Thank you. Who else wishes to be heard? Yes, sir, come forward.
Good evening. My name is Paul Nagel. I'm a 32-year resident of Horseshoe Bend. I'm also the listing broker for the property. I want to make a comment about the office condo development that was referred to earlier across from Target. The gentleman that was a developer of that project is a business associate of mine. I've known him for a number of years. In fact, I sold him some land further down on Holcomb Bridge Road for a smaller office condo project. I've had an ongoing dialogue for the last 5 years with this gentleman, trying to get him to present us with an offer. We've gone back and forth, back and forth. We've never been able to sit down and draw a contract and have a successful conclusion. 6 months ago, this gentleman called me, and he was trying to sell me a Clear Channel franchise. That's a pretty good indicator that things aren't going well with office condo development. We talked for a while. I said, I thought you were calling me for renewed interest in our project. And he started laughing. He said, if you can find me the purchasers and the financing, come talk to me. So there's very little incentive right now in our submarket for office condo development, and there probably won't be, dare say, for the next 5 years. And that's my very brief comments.
Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir, come forward.
My name is Terry Gillette. I live at 320 Brayward Chase, Roswell, Georgia. I, too, live in Horseshoe Bend, and I am a relatively new board member of the Homeowners Association. And I'd just like to point out two things. One thing I've noticed, I don't know that I've heard a single person from this community who's come up here and said, you know, what we really need in our neighborhood or near our homes is a car wash. And I think the entire support from anyone who lives where we are is based purely on the fact that there's 6 acres of protected land in the current proposal and the threat of that only being 3 acres and these properties being built only a short distance away from their house. And I was just, you know, what was interesting to me is the gentleman who just spoke, who apparently is an expert on it, he lists the property, just told us that no one's going to build that plan for 5 years because there's no market for it. So I'm really wondering if there's the primary use is something that nobody wants, and the sort of threat that is used, the stick that's being used to encourage people to support this, it sounds like isn't a significant likelihood. I'm just curious. It seems to me that the decision is pretty clear.
I've lived in Roswell more than 30 years. And so it's a long-term concern. I think short-term you make a good point. I think if
I understand that,
and
I guess
in 5 years, when you've lived here 60 is not a long time.
And Mayor, I've lived here for almost 10 years, and I understand what you're saying. I guess my perspective is we're sitting here acting like the only 2 plausible uses for this piece of property are these 2 plans, and that seems to me a lazy choice on all of our parts.
Does anyone else wish to speak? I see no hands up. We're going to close the public hearing portion. At this time, the applicant has an opportunity for rebuttal.
Put up our sheet. Mayor and Council, we've heard a lot of discussion tonight, a lot of interesting points, a lot of things to note. I want to start my presentation by telling you that portion of Holcomb Bridge Road where this property lies is a committed commercial corridor, and the present existence of this property zoned O&P is spot zoning. If you go down Holcomb Bridge Road from west of this to east of this, it's pretty plain when you look at it. What these people are asking you to say tonight is, it's okay to go to a movie, but we don't want a car wash. It's okay to go to McDonald's and get a burger, but we don't want a car wash. It's okay to go to AutoZone and get some car parts, but we don't want a cleaner. We go down the road to the cleaner. It's okay to go to Canada Tire and get a new set of tires for your truck, but we don't want a car wash. Question of what use is what in a commercial district is not what this city is all about, not what this procedure is all about. What this procedure is all about is, are we going to do the right thing for the right reasons for the right people? I would stress to you that the first fact is that's a committed commercial corridor. I would agree with all of you that both as office development and as commercial development, this city, this area, is in a world of hurt. We have way too many vacant spaces. I would submit to you that if you approve this zoning, two good things happen. You get 3 shiny, new, environmentally sensitive full spaces, and you get a 6-acre nature preserve from now on until eternity. Those two things will happen. I think that's important. You have to admit that if this is approved, you get about at least half as much square footage as you would get under the other plan, and you have to admit that it's all up front beside the road. As for affecting the aesthetics of the Horseshoe Bend entry, when you have a storage center and a Pike's Nursery as your entrance statement, I don't know that the proposed development brand new like this has any negative effect on it. The more important thing to me, that makes a lot more sense to me, is you look at the people who are most affected. You look at those 75 people, you look at those 28 who are closest. A lot of time spent with those people, no lies told to them. We showed them the plan that's here and told them what we're going to do. You've got a head count from those people that went door to door 4 weekends. Because the first time or two they went, oh no, that was the old plan. Oh no, this was that. Those aren't really your people. So they went back and did it again. Those are affected people. It makes a difference to them. So you take a look at that and you try and decide what is the right thing to do under the circumstances. First of all, where do the people live that are in opposition under this fair and impartial survey that I've got the sheet on the front of the page there? Where do those people live, those 230 people that oppose it? That's not my question. What street? What address? Thank you.
We're not going to be hearing from the audience anymore. This is the opportunity for Mr. Rollator's rebuttal. Everyone's had an opportunity to speak. After Mr. Rollator speaks, there'll be questions of counsel. But this is not the opportunity for public input. Everyone has had full opportunity to speak. Mr. Rollator, you may proceed.
Thank you, sir. If we do this development as it's proposed, the people closest to it stay protected. Nobody else is harmed. The point I would make, and it's always been my first rule of zoning, is can you see it, hear it, or smell it? And if you're sitting on your front porch and you can see it, hear it, or smell it, it's of some serious concern to you. If you're on 1.25 miles away down another street looking out your front door, I don't think it's the same thing. I think the most important parts of zoning, when we talk about health, safety, welfare, all those magic legal words, is can you hear it, can you see it, can you smell it? And you've heard from the people who can see it, hear it, or smell it, maybe. Traffic concerns, we gave you numbers, we gave you figures, we did a study. I don't see any numbers from the other side. Environmental report, we found the best company in the country to deal with this kind of issue in Procter & Gamble, producing the newest product they got. So environmental concerns aren't out there. Traffic's not out there, that's not out there. Surely a signalized intersection and a red light and a cross easement are going to improve the traffic in this area, understanding with the rebirth of the shopping center across the street, we need the traffic light anyhow. Those things just tend to amaze me. To propose that somebody's got an indoor recreational use for it, our owner and our broker haven't heard from them. I'd like to know where they are. Basically, if you say, well, that court-ordered settlement is no good, you're asking David Davidson to go up and thumb his nose at a judge and say, Judge, the order you signed 5 years ago that we shook on with this developer isn't worth flip. We've changed our mind, okay? If David goes down there, I'm not going with him. I don't think that's what the judge wants to hear. Is this not a done deal? I would tell you this is a done deal. I would tell you that there'll be 180 students in that facility. There won't be 270. I don't know what they do in their 10,000 square feet. On ours, we're going to make sure there's enough room for each child. We're going to make sure they're properly taken care of. And it's an expanded program that also offers tutoring and other issues, not just a daycare center. And I have no objection to daycare centers. I have 4 grandchildren. Daycare centers are wonderful. One of the objectors owns the kids are kids up the street. I figure that one. I agree with him. I'd be opposed too. The things that you can't get over and that make the difference here are simple facts. The zoning is proper if you look up and down Holcomb Bridge Road. Within a half a mile, go find me another office use. It's a commercial corridor, and it's pretty nice stuff compared to what a lot of places have. And it's blighted and suffering somewhat now. This won't be blighted and it won't suffer. These people get 6.2 acres of forever woods instead of 3.1, and I would ask you to add as a condition, if you approve this, that the land disturbance permit would not be issued until such time as the conservation easement was signed and dedicated and approved by the Roswell City Attorney. Solves the problem. So I look back in the end and I kind of get tickled. I've been up here in Roswell making presentations and representing nice people since 1983. Used to, there was a very standard rule. Bring enough people, make enough noise, and we'll have that good old Roswell fish fry. We're the frying pan and the oil, and that people, those applicants, they're the fish. And they get cooked every time. I've been fried a lot of times, and I've had a lot of fun with it. But I also believe that times change, people change, and the city of Roswell changes. I think what I heard in the last election was, we have to change. We're not exactly what we were, and we don't want to go down. We want to go up, and we're committed to going up. I suggest to you that approving this zoning is a step toward going up. If you just ask yourself, what are the true negative upfront impacts to people if I approve this that wreck their health, safety, welfare, or morals, then I think that's the key question. I don't every day get the chance to represent a good developer on a good presentation. This is a good one. I think it's an opportunity that I don't want to see get away. More buffer, less density, less traffic. I quit. I go on from there. I'm happy to answer any questions any of you have, but I am dead serious. If Roswell is becoming business friendly, this is a good time to put your foot down and start.
Does the council have any questions for Mr. Rollator? Councilmember Price.
I just wanted to clarify the height of the proposed education, learning, daycare, whatever. I have seen a discrepancy between 1 and 2 stories.
According to Brad, it's 1 story.
1 story. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This time we'll entertain any comments from council before we entertain a motion from Councilmember Price. Anyone wish to comment? Councilmember Wynn.
It's not a comment, it's a question to staff, if I may.
Certainly.
To clarify a statement that Mr. Herr made, that he would only have 60 feet from, I think he said, from his house or from his property line to impervious?
Property line.
Okay, property line. What is it from his house, from the house to impervious? I'm looking at this map and it looks probably...
Under which plan?
Under the settlement plan. Because I'm looking at what Mr. Rollator showed versus what Mr. Herr was talking about. So I want to get a clarification on that, please.
This is the office building, the driveway, parking area.
There you are.
And this is the back property line. So probably within 50 to 60 feet to the driveway or the parking spaces.
Okay, what is it to his residence? Would you guesstimate?
His residence is probably up in this location. Probably another 50 feet to the actual back of his residence.
May I speak?
No, so we're talking 125 feet.
Mr. Townsend, would you go to the homeowner? And I think he might. We're not going to give him an opportunity to speak, but if the facts are different, I think he understands his property.
The homeowner's indicating his back deck is probably about 10 feet from the property line, so it's probably in this area. So you're talking to the driveway, to the building, to the parking area. You're talking anywhere between 75 to 100 feet.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a follow-up to that, the
that the area of the buffer that's an undisturbed buffer. Is that correct? So that can't be graded or can't take down any trees.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to confirm that when we rezone, it's generally, well, it is to a site plan. Under this would be rezoning from office professional to C3 with the specific uses as they are and the buildings where they are. But if those buildings, uses were to, let me try that again. The businesses were to go out of business, those buildings are still there, and as long as you can fit whatever uses are under C3 into those buildings, you have the ability to do that. Is that correct? I'm not sure which one of you.
The question is this zoning conditioned to the uses or just conditioned to the site plan?
The way the application
Is that correct?
Yeah, basically.
The way the application was submitted were for this particular uses. If their buildings then become vacant and a use can reuse that building, is that the?
Can you use? Let's say you take the car wash. Could they use the car wash for a drive-through restaurant?
Basically.
Or would they be limited to a car wash use?
David?
Unless the council conditions that they could use it for any of the uses allowed in C3, the way it's proposed right now.
That's what I was afraid of. So that's one of my concerns is that longer term, as we look at things and as we've seen along this corridor, that those uses could also come into play at some other point. Obviously, it's great to have things as they are today, but we know what the situation is today as well.
Any other questions or comments before we entertain a motion? Mrs. Price, do you have a guess? Yes, Councilman Eichelhardt.
I guess I'll go ahead and make some comments, I guess. This one is a tough one because you've got folks who are directly impacted right in their backyards, obviously. And I think the very last comment, interestingly enough, was probably the most clear that I saw shaking of the heads of the folks who live right behind there. It's not so much they support this rezoning specifically, but the fact that it has a greater buffer to their properties. And I certainly understand that and appreciate that and respect that. I think the concern, this is a vacant property, it's been that way for a while. Yes, it's got office zoning and there hasn't been a whole lot of interest. But I'll bet you, and I haven't done this, so maybe our broker could help us with this, but that's true with a lot of the properties along Roswell in the last few years, certainly within the last year and a half. So I'm not sure how reasonable that is in terms of a justification for switching to something else. The reason it is so much retail in our area is because, as someone said, Fulton County has gifted us with those kind of things. We had no choice in those options. The times that we have made choices all along this corridor, meaning all of Holcomb Bridge east of 400, we've said no commercial south of Holcomb Bridge. We've kept to that. And granted, there's now just this one little piece, but it's not our fault that we're following what we have said we would do. And it's not the city's responsibility to provide that applicant with a profit margin, and they know what they're buying when they buy it. I do believe, and of course it's my judgment, so it could easily be wrong, particularly when you involve Fulton County courts, that what leaves the 3.1 acres is unlikely to be built, and highly likely that there will be a greater buffer. So if that's the case, and of course I can't guarantee that, but if that's the case, then those homeowners affected along that back property line may see ultimately the same thing with a different project. And I very much appreciate the applicant and the work they've done in trying to go door to door and again understand the concerns of those who live right there. But it's easy to say Roswell is over retail. It has been for as long as I can remember. Going back in all the minutes back to 2000 from when it's on the computer, we've talked about it every single year from 2000 up until today, and it's only gotten worse. And it concerns me greatly that we would move forward and put more, given the conditions we have all around. So that's the comments I want to make beforehand, if that impacts any kind of motion. We'll see if there's more to make.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I'd like to I'd like to thank the homeowners that are here on both sides of this issue. I know it's been a long night for all of you. Appreciate you being here. We've heard from Many of you, we've heard probably from all of you via email, and we appreciate your responses, and we appreciate you being a part of the process. It's a very important part, and it's very important for us to hear from all of you. So I wanted to express some gratitude to all of you. Also wanted to thank the developers for their efforts. I know they've put in a lot of time and energy trying to move this plan forward. It's not an easy task. Certainly going door to door is going above and beyond what most developers would do. So I wanted to acknowledge them for their efforts as well. Mr. Herb made a comment that I think was reiterated probably by a lot of people in the room, and that's that we want to preserve the home values and quality of life. And I think that's really what this issue is all about. How do we best accomplish that? How do we preserve our home values and quality of life? Mr. Rollator made a comment about being business friendly. I think that is important for Roswell too, but I think this issue is not necessarily about being business friendly. It's really more about home values and quality of life, and that's the way I've been trying to look at this and trying to assess this project. There's an argument that getting it's a pretty easy argument, that 6 acres of conservation easement is extremely compelling. That is a great argument. When somebody comes up and says, hey, do you want 6 acres or do you want 3? Of course you'd say, I'll take the 6 acres. That's a pretty simple solution. But when you really start to break it down and take a look at it, is what does that additional 3 acres get for you? And incrementally, is it actually worth what you're giving up for what you're getting? I think that the city previously did a good job in working with the owner of the property to come up with a settlement that is a pretty good plan, that is fairly low impact on the community. The 3 acres is a great buffer, particularly because it's undisturbed for Horseshoe Bend. Mr. Herb probably is the most impacted, admittedly, but I think he also, when you look at it, probably has 75 to 100 feet of undisturbed buffer before you can get to his property. The other important thing about the way this whole property is situated is where that the nearest building, office building would be, that grade is 30 feet below Holcomb Bridge Road, so it is way down. Even if they build that office building 10 feet higher than that, he's still 15 feet below Mr. Herb's house. So trying to take a look at the most impacted neighbor, how much is he really going to be impacted by this? Certainly it's nice to have 6 acres, but I think we're protecting him. I think he has been protected by the city previously by the plan that was settled before, and I think if this ever does get developed, particularly because these buildings we have determined have to be smaller, I think he'll still have that protection. And you also need to look at the uses. The car wash, the dry cleaner are very auto-intensive uses. There are cars in and out of there all day long. Office uses, sure, they're in there at peak times. They're probably going to be just as bad as these other uses. But during the day, it's going to be relatively quiet. At night, there's not going to be anybody there. There's going to be no impact to the neighborhoods. There's going to be no noise coming from an office development. So to me, that's a better neighbor to the residences. So with all those things being said, I reiterate what Councilman Eigelhart said about the concern for having C3 long-term. What's that going to look like? These are specialty use buildings. There's only a limited number of uses that can go in there. It's not like an office building where you can just trade out uses. So I have difficulty supporting this zoning.
Councilmember Wynn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I want to reiterate what Councilmember Depolito said. Thank you all for coming. It shows that you really care about not only your community but also your city, and that's how come we're here. We have to look at the overall picture of what's going on. And I can tell you honestly, hello? Sorry, we're in a meeting. I can honestly say that I did not make up my mind when I was walked in this door. I talked to Mr. Brennan. I have talked to Mr. Rollator. I have talked to both sides. I've talked to several people. I talked to Jennifer. So I have talked to people, and I told Mr. Brennan, and I've told Mr. Rollator, I was going to wait and hear what the people had to say tonight and look at the pros and cons, because I think that's what we're here to do. Emails are great, petitions are great, but until I hear it from the horse's mouth, that's where I have to make my decision. This is going to be one of the toughest decisions I'm going to have to make since I've been on council. It'll be easier for me just to flip a coin, but that's not how we do it up here. I do have concerns about this commercial. It's going to C3. I mean, that's a huge jump from OP to C3. And I have to agree with my colleague, not have to, but I will agree with my colleague, Councilman Eichelhart, that once it's a car wash, it's always a car wash. And if that car wash goes out of business, what is it? I mean, if it's a gas station, if it's anything that can be into C3, that's what it's going to be. And that concerns me. Now, I live in a large subdivision, but I live what's called the Willows, Terraces of Willow Springs, which is 39 homes. And we've been impacted by some heavy development also. So I know what you're going through, and I know what you want to protect. But I think what we have to do is look at the overall picture here and how it's going to affect all of the neighborhood, all of Horseshoe Bend. And my heart goes out to anybody that is adjacent to that. I know that it's not easy to think that you could lose 3 acres because 5 people are sitting up here and said that's how it's going to be. But it's a very tough decision, and it's not going to be an easy one for me. And that's all I really have to say right now. Thank you.
Anyone other council members wish to comment? Councilmember Diamond.
I promise I'll keep this short. I know those benches get really hard. This one, I think everybody agrees, is one of the toughest ones we've had. At first blush, it's Holcomb Bridge Road. How could it not be commercial? It's a commercial state road. I have huge respect for people on both sides of this issue, and I've spent a lot of time with both of them, both sides. There's additional green space. There's reducing the size of the scope of the development. There's interparcel access. It has some of the buzz things that we love to see, the 10-foot sidewalks, the commercial that's around it. It'd be cleaning up the property that definitely needs some cleaning up. Not doing so, are we leaving an eyesore? The Planning Commission and staff recommendations, however, have given us a different view. And looking into it, I find my biggest concern is the daycare combo. I think reducing the playground size the way we are, and what I find in the minutes is part of that is because of the ravine right next to it and the detention pond, which concerns me somewhat, having children right next to it too. But the traffic of the daycare and the mix of all this is concerning. I do like all 3 of these projects. I don't love the design of the buildings, but I imagine DRB could fix that. I'd like to see them somewhere else in a more applicable place. I think we've had a number of applications that are great projects, just as I've heard Becky say before, we're trying to put 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack. It just seems like this maybe isn't exactly the right spot. So I think I'm going to have difficulty supporting it as well.
Anyone else wish to comment before we entertain a motion? We have a motion. Councilmember Price.
Yes, as liaison to community development, I guess it falls to me to flip the coin, as has been said. It's very difficult to move on this when you have people on both sides with such compelling arguments, and I appreciate everyone who's expressed those and who's communicated with us by email or phone call. There are a number of things I'm still not totally clear on, but I guess it's too late for me to ask any more questions.
It is not too late to ask questions if you're trying to use that as a dodge.
No, well, specifically regarding the status that's being requested, I guess it's not clear to me what is being requested, because I've seen it divided into parcels with P1 being requested to be a C3, P2 being requested to be a C3 conditional to car wash, so that would be the only thing that could go there. And then the remaining parcel, I've seen it being requested as a C3, and I've also seen it being requested as an OP. So I'm still not entirely clear on that, what is actually being requested.
Mr. Townsend, are you in a position to answer that?
All of the property is currently zoned OP. The request, parcel 1, which is the dry cleaner, is going from OP to C3. Parcel 2 is going from OP to C3, a conditional use for the car wash. Parcel 3 is going from OP to C3, a conditional use for the daycare center. The remaining 6 acres is remaining in OP.
Just for clarification, so the daycare is a conditional use
In C3.
and the car wash is a conditional use in C3, and the cleaners would be unconditional C3.
Right.
Okay, so parcel 2 and 3 are conditional, parcel 1 is not, all
Right.
of them within C3. Okay, and it's only the remaining stream, et cetera, that's remains OP.
OP, right.
And can you clarify also, there was some comment earlier that that portion, that 3 acres, the original 3 acres from the settlement agreement, is not in a conservation easement, but would that be expected at this point anyway until land disturbance had occurred?
Not until the land disturbance would be submitted, and we would not issue them a land disturbance until they would put that 3.1 in conservation.
So no one's neglect in that duty at this point?
No.
Okay. And the applicant has, I know that Planning Commission recommended against it, and as they put it to ask me their charge in deciding that, and it was expressed to me that they felt that they had to uphold the current land use plan, which of course includes settlement, which wasn't a real compelling argument to me, but and then of course staff has recommended against it, but also has indicated conditions should we approve it, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the applicant has agreed to those conditions?
Yes.
All those conditions? I think he mentioned
Yes.
several others this evening. One being a reciprocal easement with Pikes. That was not one of your conditions?
Well, that we have a copy of an existing easement that shows that.
Okay, so that wouldn't be a condition?
They would just record that and make it an official document as part of the proper approval.
And is it clarified in the conditions about any conservation agreement?
I believe it's condition number 6 of our recommendations that would include that prior to the land disturbance permit, a conservation easement acceptable to the city of Roswell, and then would be recorded in Fulton County.
Okay, I think Mr. Roller added that additional stipulation that it be, again, that be approved by mayor and council in a separate act.
Mayor and council usually doesn't approve a separate conservation easement. Your action of approving the rezoning with that condition would
Okay, I
take care.
just heard that Mr. Rollator expressed that, so I just wanted to clarify if that was necessary.
Not really.
Okay. All right. Well, just for the exercise, I'll move to approve with staff's conditions.
Motion for approval with staff conditions. Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Is there a second motion?
Move to deny the petition.
Motion for denial by Councilmember Betty Price. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Any further discussion on the motion to deny? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. Finish up this meeting. Councilmember Wynn, your 5 minutes is up. Councilmember DiPolito, 5 minutes is up. Councilmember Price, Councilmember Eichelhart, if you'll return to the dais.
Hey, Brett. One last comment. Thank you. You're welcome. We do want to try to find a way. If there's any chance at all that you guys can come up with any properties that we can work real diligently. And we only need the 2.5 to 2.
The green things look a little funny, actually.
Well,
I'm
two
not
uses.
sure that they work.
Somewhere in that forward.
Kind of looks like that.
All right? So we'll work real hard.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Full house here to proceed with.
The next item is RZ 1008, initiation of text amendment regarding a revision to Chapter 10.39, sidewalk cafes. Brad Townsend.
Thank you. This is a proposed initiation for a text amendment dealing with sidewalk cafes to clarify the development standards, to increase the minimum clearance distance of 3 feet to 5 feet, and also include the requirement for the barrier to meet ADA requirements. The committee on August 25th recommended initiation of the text amendment. This will go through the standard text amendment initiation. It will be processed through the Planning Commission and will come back to Mayor and Council for 2 readings. Staff would recommend approval of the initiation.
Do we have a motion to approve the initiation of the amendment?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Price. Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hand. Passes unanimously.
The next item is a text amendment regarding precious metals and gems ordinance. This would be the first reading. Mr. Townsend.
Yes, this is a proposed text amendment that deals with the Precious Metals and Gems Ordinance, which is part of Chapter 10 of the Code of Ordinances. This would amend the current regulations to allow for the city administrator to be responsible for the issuance of the business license instead of a public hearing in front of mayor and council. The research that I did through this current ordinance, I believe there were 15 references to mayor and council, and I changed 13 of them. We also included an appeal process. If the administrator denies an application, it can be appealed to the mayor and council. The other area that is being struck through is on page 2 of the ordinance, or draft ordinance, dealing with the bond requirement being removed. That is a requirement that the committee requested that it be removed from the current ordinance. I believe this is a first reading, so the city attorney could, if so moved.
Please read the ordinance.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances dealing with precious metals and gems dealers by the deletion of the performance bonding requirements and the deletion of the requirements for a public hearing by the mayor and city council, adding an appeal process to the mayor and city council for any denied licenses for a precious metals and gems dealer. Now therefore, pursuant to their authority, the mayor and city council adopt the following ordinance to remove the requirements for a performance bond and a public hearing. Also change the license approval from the mayor and city council to the city administrator and include an appeal procedure of denied licenses to be heard by the mayor and city council. Text of which is incorporated herein by reference and if approved, this will be the first reading.
I support this ordinance, but Wayne, who works for me, brought me a request having to do with these people who buy gold and silver. And he had some property stolen from him, his wife's jewelry. And he said that normally in the past they would have taken this to a pawn shop, and the pawn shops require that you hold property for 30 days before you dispose of it. But now that we have folks buying gold and silver, they're melting it down immediately, and they're becoming fences for stolen jewelry because it can turn over so quickly. So the one question I've got, and he asked that I approach the state legislature and see if we could change that, and I brought this up with Harry Geisinger. But the question is, at the city of Roswell, could we require, just as pawn shops have to hold gold and silver for a period of time, that we require precious these folks in this business, because he was telling me that in Cherokee County, it's become the fence of choice now because they get their money immediately, and these folks are becoming fences for stolen jewelry. So, David, could you look into that?
Yes, sir.
I mean, it was a good point, and he was told by the policeman up there. He said, "Look, this is where they're going now, and they're getting better money to melt it down." And even though the policeman they found who stole it, and they got back to the where it was sold within 7 days. His wife's jewelry had already been melted down, and a lot of the value had been lost. So if we could look into that, I think pawn shops and the precious metals folks should be on the same footing.
Okay.
Any other suggestions for changes? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had actually a similar concern to that. When we first started talking about this text amendment, we primarily had only had people come through for temporary licenses, and I guess we discovered at the committee meeting that this is for all permanent licenses as well. So that leads me to a similar question about how does this impact our pawn shop ordinance. We're trying to limit the number of uses like that, and are we really providing a loophole for people to have we buy gold shops, and not to necessarily name a name, but you know what I mean. Are we kind of opening the door for a use that we really don't want? And to specifically address the mayor's concern, are we providing opportunities for illegal activity? So, it probably goes even beyond this text amendment, but I think that's something we need to really think about, is those types of shops that may potentially be popping up and skirting around the pawn shop issue.
Councilmember DiPolito, what if we included, don't we have a distance between pawn shops? What if we included that for gold and silver shops?
We amended the ordinance to include a 5,000 feet from any existing pawn shop.
But
how does that play into this precious metal?
Right now, but we might add to it.
And I think that would help, certainly.
So do you want to say 5,000 feet from a gold and silver shop, or 5,000 feet from a gold and silver shop or pawn shop? It's something to consider.
I'd be open to
why
whatever.
Why don't we bring this up at a committee discussion? Councilmember Price? This is within your liaison area.
Does that require a motion?
No, it doesn't require a motion. I'm just suggesting that for further discussion after staff looks into it and other thoughts, do we want to add the Mr. Davidson could look into this. Can we regulate how long they have to hold things and put them under similar requirements to pawn shops? And should we look at how this relates? This is an alternative to a pawn shop, and do we want to put similar restrictions on these that we put on pawn shops? Because we looked at it saying, well, we're not doing this for pawn shops. Why should we do it for these people? But the converse is also true.
So we would take it to committee prior to the second reading? Is that
Yes, what we're suggesting, and folks think about it. I won't be here. I'll be in Istanbul. I like to say that. And I'll be not here, and I'll be in Istanbul. So any further discussion before we entertain a motion? Do we have a motion to approve the first reading?
Move to approve the first reading with interim discussion at committee.
Motion by Councilmember Price. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Nguyen. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We have a recommendation for closure. Discuss personnel, acquisition of real estate, and litigation. Do we have a motion for closure? Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Nguyen. All in favor, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We'll meet down in, what do we call that room? The torture? The war room? Admin conference room.